before we get going and before you start showing off all your jazz hand stuff, why don't you tell people who you are? What's your name? Introduce yourself. We're going to start rolling. Trust me.
Right now?
Yeah. Yes, man. We're rolling right into it.
So what do you want to know? So Scott Jarnagin, CEO of Caddis Cloud Solutions.
Slow down. What's the name of this company?
Caddis Cloud Solutions.
That's the weirdest spelling ever. How do you spell it?
Caddis Cloud Solutions.
So if you guys don't know, Scott's a Marine, and it's my duty to make sure I shit all over him as fast as I can.
You should. It's
just to express my dominance being Navy, right? I think that we...
Well, you are a good taxi service, for sure.
There it is. No, but what I was saying is this will be a podcast that I could tell, although we had a pretty awesome lunch. And by the way, have you had ramen anywhere in Texas better than that?
It's the first time having ramen in Texas, because who comes to Texas for ramen?
Yeah, these guys are no joke, though. They went to Japan
fantastic.
and they did the whole dojo thing and then brought that whole thing back. It's fantastic, wasn't it?
It was fantastic. Ramen's an experience, for sure.
It's a comfort food. I normally have this thing on lockdown when people come in to do these podcasts with me. I'm either doing we'll go see Joe Rogan the night before, or we're going to do Terry Black's, which is institutional barbecue, you know what I'm saying? Or I like to pull a little ramen tatsu out of my back pocket every now and then.
That was a good call. That was a good call.
But listen, I've had the chance to know you for a bit, and we met through one of my colleagues, one of my co-founders, and we call him Rico Suave. You probably didn't call him that. Where
AG, Mr. Garcia, Anthony Garcia, for sure.
The Anthony Garcia, yeah. Rico Suave, man, that's the most handsome Mexican man I've ever seen in my life. I challenge you to tell me there's a better looking man.
He's a good looking guy. He's a good looking guy, yeah, for sure.
He's a good dude, and I think that he inspires both of us in some ways with his devotion.
He started on the OCI time. I remember the first day I met him, we were interviewing him, and I came up back from interviewing. I was feeling like I was back in some kind of military recruitment effort. I was so gung-ho. I wanted to put on a pack and jump out the building. It was a great experience, really getting to meet him for the first time. There's so much great energy with Anthony, and then him coming onto the team and everything he did. And
he's got a good interview.
He's just a great, outstanding person.
Yeah, so I'm very lucky to be able to have him as a co-founder. I remember we worked together at Nova, and we were talking about the story earlier. I think her name was Wilma or something like that, but she was Oracle. And I didn't realize until we were eating today that when Anthony left Nova to go to work at Oracle, you were his boss, huh? Or somewhere in the chain of command.
Does he really have a boss? But yeah, so I was leading the team at the time, and Anthony came on, and he was doing some fantastic things, not only from a project management perspective, but also initiated the veteran internship program at OCI. So I was going on at Oracle, and he found out about it and really pushed it within OCI.
So what was OCI?
Oracle Cloud.
Okay.
So you had Oracle, and then Oracle, it was bare metal at the time. And it was kind of
that's what I remember.
A startup, so to speak. And then as they've grown up more and more,
use better acronyms to better.
Yeah, they're absorbed into the mothership, so to speak.
Oh, I gotcha. So OCI is what you guys call the Oracle Cloud, or what
yes, Oracle Cloud and bare metal. Yes,
I remember the bare metal side. So small world, because he was big. He was setting up veteran stuff for you guys at Oracle or OCI, right?
Yes, he set it up. I mean, so like I said, Oracle had a program, and he brought it into OCI and really pushed it. He's one of the reasons why the Veterans Internship Program is as successful as it is in OCI.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is about
with Tony
him.
And a few other
I love that, man, but I want to talk to you, right? So
let's do it.
Why don't we start at the beginning? Where are you from?
Where am I not from? That's a great question.
Well, so I know that you're a former Marine. You have a heritage of that as well, don't you?
My father served in the Navy for 31 years. Yeah. He was active duty. And then actually when he was a recruiter for the Navy, I was in Quincy, Illinois when I was born.
You were born in Quincy, Illinois?
Quincy, yeah. So Midwest kind of guy.
Okay.
Grew up early in areas of Missouri, Kentucky, Missouri, and then moved to San Diego.
What was your father? Was he a recruiter throughout the end of his career?
No, he's a BT. He boatsman tech.
Boatsman tech. I didn't even know those two words went together.
Boatsman tech.
Okay.
So he's engineer basically. So fixing all the engines, all kind of stuff. So on destroyers. William H. Stanley is one of the ships that I knew he was stationed on for quite some time.
And was the daunting task that he had just too intimidating for you to want to try to be in the Navy? Is that why you went Marine Corps? I don't blame you is what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's those awesome dungarees and hat that it's just, he just
Chicks dig it. Chicks dig that.
That's what I hear. Actually when so my brother served 28 years in the Marine Corps and retired. He was sergeant major in the Marine Corps.
Gotcha.
Retired sergeant major. And actually, when my brother, he's a couple years older than I am, when he enlisted and then went, he was stationed in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina for a little bit. I decided I was going to enlist. And I got a letter, at the time we wrote letters, from my brother saying, what the hell are you doing? This is not for you. This is not for you. Of all the people, not for you. And my dad called me.
Because were you the nerd? You weren't the soft guy. Obviously, you know where the gym's at. I could see you, right? But
I was not the nerd. I definitely not a nerd. I was a little feistier when I was younger. And I always say authority with, or challenges with authority, like someone telling me what to do all the time. Never really liked that. And my dad's like, it's not for you. You don't like being told what to do, Scotty. What are you doing?
Take a number.
And I'm like, hey, Dad, you can't tell me what to do. I'm joining.
Sucker.
Yeah, and
you taught him.
Exactly. And when I was going through the recruitment offices, the Marine Corps had such amazing videos.
Really they do have better looking. Look, they do a better job of.
The recruitment videos are fantastic, and the recruiter at the time just sold me. So I'm like, hey. So I joined and was active duty for a bit, and then reserves, and then I was stationed. Like my last station was Woodby Island Naval Air Station in
Woodby. That's how you got up to Washington then? Because you
no. So lived in San Diego, and then my father, we transferred to Washington State in the late '80s.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, in the late '80s. So.
So you went up, you lived up there like right during the birth of like Microsoft and grunge.
I want to say, yeah.
You were there when Nirvana first started.
86, I believe, 87, something like that. 86, I believe. We moved up there. So it was in middle of high school. And first day in December, walking to school, coming from California, I had a pair of pants, an A long sleeve shirt, and a windbreaker. Found out that was not the appropriate attire for Washington State. Oh, yeah. So I had to go to
whole new wardrobe.
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest is beautiful though. I love it. I mean, like I need some sun. I can't live there, but I do love the Ivory. Was it the Emerald Pass?
Emerald City. Yeah. Emerald City.
Yeah. So like, going hunting out in Othello, you land in Seattle, obviously, and what a different environment the minute you go through that pass.
Eastern Washington for sure. Yeah. Stevens Pass.
You're in a whole other country. It seems like.
It seems. Yeah. No. I find it just an area of the country that I love. Yeah. Just the beauty of the country, because in the western side of the state, beautiful green lush mountains, and then you get to the eastern side of the state, it's kind of high desert. So yeah, 70 degrees in western Washington, it's going to be 90 to 100 degrees in eastern Washington. A lot of wineries over there.
I lived in Spokane for 5 years. You ever been there?
I have.
Fairchild. My dad was stationed at Fairchild.
A lot of rocks and water. Yeah.
I loved that. I loved it there. Mine was dyslexic for yours. You went from California to Seattle, which is a huge, cultural shift. I went from Eastern Washington, Spokane, to Southern California, where you have like Sean Ray, Mr. Olympia lives down the street, and Janet Evans is a gold medalist, and your school has actors and actresses, and there's literally that's the first time I ever saw a Lamborghini was like down the road from us.
There are a lot of Volkswagen like bugs and buses
in the Pacific Northwest.
No, in San Diego where I lived. Yeah,
yeah. What a great place! I do love San Diego. So your dad retired. You went Marine Corps, and then when you got out, where did you go when you got out of the military?
So I would say I started in this business in distribution. Not I would say
from where though. Like, did you go back to the Pacific Northwest?
Oh, yeah, Seattle. Yeah. Okay. So I was in Seattle for 38 years. So I recently relocated to Texas.
I got you.
So
you don't look like a Seattle guy. You look like a Texan already. You know what I'm saying?
I almost cursed. It's the sun.
You could curse all you want.
It's the sun. It's the million degrees that's here.
It is. I think it's 117 degrees today in Austin. It feels like, at least it feels like, but it's a moist heat.
Yes.
And I felt like from the time I parked to walk into this building, I almost spontaneously combusted from the
It's a little toasty, even in here right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It is warm. It's like I just came back. I was in Colorado. Mountains is where I belong, right? So I'll spend the entire summer next summer up in the mountains. I
don't blame you. I don't think there's a better environment to clear your head, just to realign yourself, get out in the mountains and breathe the air.
Yeah. And you just feel like you have to fight to survive up there a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? I just love the feeling of being out there in those elements.
Get your loincloth on, get a knife and just go to the woods. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, that's what I do. I just have a knife. That's it. And have you seen Rambo? Never mind. So, but I'm fascinated on how people got in this space, and I definitely want to talk more about what you're doing, right? And because groups like ours are going to be able to align on a lot of things, not just because we're veterans, but because there's things that we're doing in the industry that it's accretive for us to partner on these things. And I think that we have a trust in each other to partner, because we come from, like, I was on a command in which people were coming out of school all the time and joining our command. we didn't have time to earn trust in them because that takes forever. If they made it that command, they were qualified to be at that deployment with us.
You bet.
Does that make sense? So we kind of like, I was talking to a good friend of mine, Navy guy, and we were talking about it yesterday. And he's like, Kirk, we're
soap on a rope. Is that what you guys are talking about?
Well, listen, this guy's a completely different monster. Mike Sorelli is a former, if you look at attrition in the military, he was a Force Recon Marine Corps sniper.
He's legit. He's a real deal.
Sometimes I've seen him introduce himself as that and not as a former commander of SEAL Team 6, which is equally as impressive, right?
Yes, for sure.
And he and I were talking about some shit yesterday. And when he came to trust, he goes, bro, when guys like us come to the same units, we don't have the opportunity, the privilege, or the luxury of waiting, 6 months to establish trust. We have to trust each other.
Yeah, you drop in and get it done.
Yeah.
That's how you're trained.
I think that'll allow our businesses to, like yours, other veteran groups that we do work with.
Great.
We work with our civilian counterparts all the time. I mean, 1/3 of my company is military, which means 2/3 has a paramilitary type mindset.
Sure, of course.
But they just believe in our mission. They don't have the same background. They just believe in our purpose, right? So,
but that starts from leadership.
I have some great leaders. I have an amazing leadership team, right? So, it's funny because I was asked yesterday, what are the 5 things you need to create an innovative and successful startup? If I asked you that question, I don't want to put you on the spot, but like I was on the spot. And, I was like, I think the first thing you need to create a successful and innovative startup is you have to have a purpose.
100%. Purpose, focus,
I think
mission.
Culture is number 2. You have to have a bulletproof culture. Think about all the things that you did in the—
How do you define culture? Like, how would you define your culture? So that's a challenging thing to define. What you think culture is successful? Because culture means a lot of different things to many people. So
what does it mean to you? I could tell you in one word what I want my culture to be defined as.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
What does it mean to me?
Let me say this. I mean, like I was asked if I could define my company with one word, and I was like, oof. I said grit. That's the only word. Relentless grit is what my team has.
I say relentless for sure. Yeah.
You have to have a relentless mindset to be successful because I'll be 10/19 is the start of my company, but I launched it on 11/1, and I'm coming up to my 5-year anniversary.
Congrats. Yeah.
I appreciate that, but I cannot begin to explain the number of how many times since you started your business have you been in the fetal position?
No one, unless you've done it and walked in the shoes, so to speak. And I'm sure there's a lot of harder things out there, but when you decide to step out on your own, and of course it was just me at the time, and then I have a few other people working for the company, and just even more pressure, right?
Yes, because there's more souls to take care of.
But you still have family you're taking care of, and that's still relying upon you. That it is, well, you got to grind it out, and you got to get up every day with purpose. You got to finish the day with purpose, and you got to get up every day understanding what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And it's not that I don't look back and say, I looked back a few times and said, what the hell did I do? Especially when I told you the first 4 weeks out, I sat in my apartment between the apartment and the pub, going back and forth. Like,
who doesn't do that?
Yes.
Like, what did I do?
But once I stepped out and kind of announced that I had left and what I was doing, at that time I was CloudSphere Consulting, I got great feedback in the market. I was actually surprised at how accepted it was in the market. So that was, and within a few weeks I had a couple of contracts, which helped out a lot, right? But, but the challenge of understanding how to grow your business, the maturity of your business, what direction you want to grow, because I get excited about the shiny things. I really do. I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Let's go. I have this core, but how do I add to that core?
Sure.
How do I start layering in? Yeah. How do I layer into those services? And if I don't layer into that service, then what partner can layer services that? So when we come to a customer, let's say you're a customer, we do these 2 things, but we have customers or services that will layer and partners that will layer all these other services to provide you something holistic. And so anytime I go to market, I want a holistic solution, program, package, or whatever to provide our customers.
Right. I love all that. Well, let me back up because I want people to have context behind where you're coming from on leadership, because I look at, I saw this ancient Chinese proverb. I love those. Do you ever check out that stuff? Like Marcus Aurelius shit?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love the books. Yeah.
But it was talking about you cannot offer anybody peace unless you have the ability to offer them violence. Because if you can't offer them peace, if you're not able to offer them peace, you're not offering violence. You're not able to offer them peace. You're just harmless, and you're not offering them shit.
You can't offer them peace if you can't protect them from violence.
That's it. Yeah. So, and for this, I look at this and I go, hey man, there are people like us that are going to go out and we're going to be creating purpose-driven businesses, and we're going to try to figure out a way to make a change in society and humanity while we try to obviously simultaneously create these really great teams around us. Yeah. I would say in the military, outside of like the military is just an incubator for leadership. Do you agree?
It certainly can be.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair.
Because not everyone gets it, right? There's a vast majority of them do, for sure. If you adopt the principles, for sure. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's a hard way. I don't know if people can make it through the military without capitulating to this process or this construct. That
Agree.
You know, and with that, even if you choose to not be a leader, you're at least in an environment where you're immersed among them.
You see what leadership is, and you get to, the different variables of leadership, what it really means.
Now, when you were in the military, you were being exposed to construction type of stuff, weren't you? Or building stuff, or like
100%. Yeah.
I mean, people just think bullet sponges when they think Marines, right? But you guys are actually like
yes, that's your core principle. Everyone learns how to be a grunt for sure. Pick up and run up a hill, right?
Yeah, but you guys have actual jobs that transcend into the civilian community, even if you didn't build.
It'd be similar to being a CB.
Yeah.
So it's part of the construction corps for sure. So that was my job. As I was part of the construction team and did heavy.
You want to be in construction?
It's all about the ASVAB, brother.
Yes.
They saw my ASVAB score, so like, you need to go. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. We have lower IQs to take those bullets. We need to go move some equipment around. Yeah.
It's something that was always interested in me. I was in construction as a kid doing various roles and jobs, whether it's landscaping or concrete, and it's just something I like to do. I like to build and because, when you're building, you also have to innovate. Like when something's broken, you did fix it. Well, how do you fix it? You got to think through the process. I really like that.
I like the part of building. I agree with everything you just said, by the way, but I also like the part of building in which you used a word just a second ago, where a word that we like to hover around in orbit is innovation. And the means and methods and how we build are what inspires me to continue to build, because the same way we were building last year is not how we're building today. And that's not how we're going to build it in a year from now. And it's typically technology that enables us to innovate in the way that we deliver product, right?
Your program should be dynamic. Right?
Yes.
In which there should be a foundation in which you're building from, and that's going to be fairly static, right? But you offer some dynamic counterparts that are going to allow you to change as the market changes, as the business changes, right? In my opinion.
So Scott, when you left the Marine Corps, you went back to the Pacific Northwest, your skill set was leadership, and you also have been exposed to construction means and methods, right? So what did you do when you got back out? Did you go right back into construction? Did you go get into... Like, what was your journey like, and how did you get from that to you went to work for one of the largest cloud providers in the world, and you ran their team of programs for a lot of construction, right? And then you went, from that into an entrepreneurial role. So you've kind of gone through the whole gamut. I mean, we all took oaths together, type of thing, and then we leave the military and we have to learn how to acclimate to our civilian fleet, right? And that takes time. And then we try to figure out
how to wear your civilian clothes so you don't look like you're just out of the military.
Yeah.
Everything's matching.
I've learned that you've missed the memo on the haircuts already. You know what I'm saying? Like, is that the same Marine Corps haircut you had when you were active duty? High and tight, baby.
No,
I love it. It looks clean.
I did get a fresh haircut. You got to be fresh when you come to these podcast things, but
it looks nice.
I just like it clean. It's just easy to maintain. Yes, I wake up like this and go to bed like this, and
look, that's perfect. My whole haircut.
Easy.
They got me all through the military. Now I'm going for dreadlocks, I think.
I try to grow it out, but I will look like Kurt Russell and Santa Claus. So I'm not a good thing. Right?
I have to watch that movie now. Yeah. But how did you go? You went out. You went in the Pacific Northwest. What was your first What were you? Take me to when you got out of the military to stop at Oracle then, and then we're going to really scratch the paint more on what you're doing now, because I'm really excited about the stuff you're doing.
Yeah, me too. So I'd say I started my career in distribution and distribution sales.
Distribution of what?
Graybar Electric, telco.
Oh, gotcha.
So you have two paths at Graybar. You have either power, electrical, or you have telco. And telco seemed more interesting to me at the time.
Really?
Power is like gray box switches. Yeah, whatever. So I started out in distribution sales, worked for a large, Graybar Electric, worked for some smaller distribution channels. When I was at a smaller group called Cable Plus in Kent, Washington, I'd won a project. in a project using a manufacturer called Motep to turn it into Molex. Molex is a large interconnect manufacturer globally. And when I won this project, the recruitment team for Motep Molex reached out to me and said, "Hey, Scott, we want to interview you for a sales engineering role." I'm like, "Sales engineering? Oh, okay, engineer? My name has never been associated with any kind of engineering whatsoever. But okay, let's do it." So I interviewed for the role as a sales engineer for a large region in the Northwest. And I got the job by answering 2 questions. "Scott, do you play golf?" "I have the clubs." "Yeah. And what do you know about fiber?" I'm like, "I know I can sell it, that's about it." So they hired me.
That's all you need to play golf and sell fiber.
Yeah. It was maybe a matter of confidence and fuss. And plus at the time I had a really young family.
Sure.
And
you're hungry.
And I was just going to drive. And the fact that they were going to offer this package, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to do this job.
Yeah.
Didn't matter if I knew it or not, which I didn't, but we did it. So I got into sales, went to manufacturing sales, got into contractor sales, integrator sales, but selling everything from phones, circuits to equipment to infrastructure, and went that route. I'll say around 10 or 11 years of doing that, I said, what, I'm tired of doing the sales gig. I want to do into project management. Because what was happening was you earn the trust of your customer, right? And then you hand it off to a PM. And these PMs haven't spent a year, 2 years, whatever, developing these relationships and understand the time it took to get here. And you hand off this project to them and they just duff it up. And you're like, hey, so.
That's why you became a PM, because they were messing it up?
Messing my stuff. Because I told my boss at the time, I'm like, I want to do this and that. How do I do that? Don't take don't take this away from me and hand it to this person over here, because
they'll ruin it.
They don't have the commitment, right?
It's so funny. Yeah. I was the opposite. I was a PM. I started as a field service engineer, when I got out of the
And how many of those projects did you know? I'm kidding. Yeah.
Well, hold on. I went the opposite direction, where I remember working in a construction trailer one day up in a Dallas project, and one of the old Bank of America data centers. A lot of guys in this industry I ran into those B of A projects, but I remember sitting in a construction trailer, watching the sales guy come in, and he hadn't seen the ball since kickoff, and he's just taking people out to go see Rangers games and dinners and stuff. And the next day I'd have to do a kickoff meeting where I'm change ordering the project for the same value as the initial sale, because whatever he sold him wasn't right. But once I understood the technical requirements that were going with this, I was able to right size the scope. And then that sales guy would end up loving me because he'd get twice as much in commission. And I was like, I'm done helping those guys go that direction when they didn't know what they were selling in the first place. So
I would say growing up the way I did from distribution to the manufacturing, I saw everything. Right?
Yeah.
And not only that, I took a lot of pride in learning for the customer. So anytime when I got into the contracting aspects and I was working with the project managers, I'm like, hey, I'm coming to the job site with you. And they didn't want me there, but I'm going there to learn. I'm like, what does all this stuff mean?
Sure.
Because I really had no idea what I was doing. And so I learned through them, which is great. They might have muffed things up. They still taught me a lot of things about the role, about infrastructure, about install, about construction. And went from everything to hospitals, to colos, to Knox, to retail, just all the different environments. So I had exposure to all that. And then at one point I said, hey, I just want to get into the project management field. That seemed really interesting.
When was that? Was it like mid-90s? Was it after the .com bust?
Let's see. It was in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Because my first role, I'd always been involved in commercial construction.
Yeah.
My first role was with a residential group in Hawaii.
Really?
So, yeah.
So you're going over to Hawaii to do projects?
Yeah. So I moved the family over to the Big Island, lived in Kona for a couple of years, 2003 to 2005. And that was a fantastic period, but I did residential construction, and these homes were substantial. The last home I worked on my project was around 2.5 acres, 10,000 square feet, 10 miles of interconnect. So it was like a commercial project but a residential.
Yeah.
And we did everything from distributed audio, video, home theater, satellite systems, phone systems, you name it, whatever, lighting control systems, whatever it took to get the home up. And these folks paid a lot of money for it.
Sure.
And after we had, some challenges at the home front back in Washington State, we were at the point where we're going to decide, are we going to stay here and establish more roots, buy and live here, or are we going back to Washington, which we did. And then I ended up working for Cochrane Electric. Cochrane Electric, a large electric firm, as a project manager. And then I went to a smaller integrator, Service Communications, worked there. And during that time, had the bust, 2008, kind of that happened. I remember
that time.
And that was a challenging time. And I would say,
16 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago where a couple of things had happened and I said, I need to find a new job. So I started looking for a new job. It took me about 9 months. And I came home one day to my friend and said, hey, you know what? I'm really tired of looking for a job. I'm just going to stop. Just going to stop doing this. I'm just tired of it. Because it was just,
You were done building? You're done being a PM?
I was done. No, I was done looking for a new job because the market took a big bust. The smaller company that I was working for was having a hard time financially, what it seemed like at the time. I said, I need to find something a little more stable for my family, right?
Sure.
So I started looking for a new job. It took me about 9 months. And the night that I said, I'm going to stop, Monster.com was a big thing at the time.
Monster, yeah.
Yeah. I got a job alert, a job post, and it said, hey, I do this stuff every day. So I applied for it. Got a call from the recruiter the next morning, 7 a.m. I had an interview at 10 a.m. that morning.
Whoa.
And then I had 3 other interviews. And then I went into Microsoft. That was an interview for me to get into Microsoft.
Shut up.
Strangest thing.
That's how fast they were growing after 2008, huh?
Yes, but it was in the retail space. They were standing up a brick and mortar retail group in Microsoft Retail. That was a startup within Microsoft, was its own business entity until it was absorbed in. They got a certain size. Now they're no longer around, but
what was the focus? They were going to go put up storefronts, like how there's Apple stores, every Microsoft stores?
Yeah, the fact that you don't know about it shows you how successful it was. So yeah, we built stores all over the U.S., all over the world.
We went from one store just to sell software.
And PCs and gear and everything else, right? It was laptops, just like it, yeah. So, we had one from 2 stores to 104.
Wow.
Stores and flagship stores, built those. So
all in the U.S.?
U.S. and no, overseas too.
Okay.
Yeah, our last flagship store was in New York and Sydney, and built those, and that was a fantastic. I mean, it was a great job, fantastic experience. Through that, I met some great characters at Microsoft. One gentleman left Microsoft, went to Oracle, bare metal at the time. And said, hey, Scott, we want you over here. And I'm like, I'm not ready to leave Microsoft yet. I have more things to do. About 1.5 years, 2 years into that, I called the gentleman. Microsoft Retail was really slowing down. I called the gentleman and said, hey, is that job still available? I'd like to come in and interview, just if it's around. So again, I told you, I don't know if Oracle HR is going to be listening to this, but hey, I never had an interview, Oracle. So I walked into the building, walked around as I told you earlier, and met some of the people that I knew from Microsoft and a few others, and got a job offer the next day or two. And
that's how quickly your career changed, huh?
Yes. But going to Microsoft was a game changer for it, because who doesn't know Microsoft?
Yeah.
And, working at Microsoft, people automatically think you know what you're doing, which is great. Right. So, and so getting a role at another organization like Microsoft and Oracle was not easy by any means, but it was different, right? Getting through those doors, just getting the opportunity because of your pedigree, so to speak.
Sure.
And going to OCI, they wanted me to stand up a DCPM team. So the DCPM was, as soon as site selection found a location, they'd
sign
you, and they'd say, okay, now go do all the NRC.
So the data center project management team is what you were creating, or you took over?
We stood up. It was there. There were a couple of people there, but we stood up the program. Myself and a few other groups. Yeah.
And that was within Oracle. So so that others that are listening, because remember, there's some people that have been in this industry for a year and some that have been in here since the beginning, but it sounds like when Oracle would go pick a location, regardless of whoever the operator was, wherever they did, they would say, hey, we just signed a contract for this much capacity here. Take it over. Is that what was happening?
It was, yeah. So we'd take a look at the contract, what they'd signed, and we look at some of the NRC scope and see if there are any deficiencies. Typically there were, right? And then we start working with the colo partners where we signed the contract and said, hey, when we'd start ramping up what it was going to take to turn that space up. Right. And in that instance, we were working with the DC engineering teams and various groups within OCI to stand stuff up. And then to a certain point, we'd stand a physical infrastructure, and then all the other teams start bringing the racks and everything else and deploying them, all the workloads.
And that was a pretty big explosion of that. Plus, you guys were kind of changing the market and how you guys were deploying. Right?
It was a tremendous amount of work. Yeah, it was a lot of work. We went from when I started, we were just building out Frankfurt. I think it was the 2nd or 3rd region. And then we went to 44 markets around the world.
44 markets. And were you guys doing that whole multiple availability zones for retroactive replication within an area, or were you guys still eggs in one basket as you scaled?
No, and it was certainly I would say they had 2 different architectures of like a 3x2, so to speak.
Yeah.
3 ADs and two POPs. And then you went to, and as we wanted to scale faster, we'd step into a market with a single AD and a single POP, right?
Yeah.
But you'd go into very specific cities, right? That you'd start standing up those locations for total scale. And they went incredibly fast.
So you got to the Microsoft right before they started doing their retail. And then as that slowed down, you went right to Oracle right when they were launching their bare metal?
About 2 years after. Yeah, they stood up 2 regions.
Okay. And then you guys were exploding. How long were you there for in that role?
Oh, about 5.5 years.
I got you.
So I started as a DCPM team and managed that. And then maybe through harassment, because I'm really good at that. If I have a skill set, it is that, I was given the opportunity to take on the site selection group.
Oh, no kidding.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge responsibility.
It is.
How was that?
It was fantastic. It was great. It was a lot of learning. There's some folks that I had to lean on quite a bit. They brought in some great experience. It was myself and 2 other people to kick it off. The gentleman that was running the group left, right? And they brought in a new leader of the space, Sanjeev Khanna. I don't know if I can say his name.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
And then it was just a couple of people that were standing things up. And I just remember one of the very first locations we were trying to find was in California for some additional capacity. And the whole team of 3 just started, picking up the phone and calling folks. And that's the way we operated for a little bit until we built a tool. We built a tool that allows saying, hey, you're a colo operator. I want all your capacity information in this specific format. And then probably a lot of hyperscalers are doing. And that tool would take this spreadsheet and suck it up into this platform that we could say, just look wherever we wanted in the world. And then I think at that point, we're tracking 100-some partners around the world with all the capacity that they are building.
So you're going to the operators, were you going through the brokers at any time? Or
No brokers or agents, just directly to the operators.
Gotcha. And how often would you have to mine that or keep that? That seems like a pretty dynamic list.
So every quarter, and the operators could send it in as much as they want, often as they wanted, but we asked them to send it every quarter. If we saw information was stale, we'd reach out to them saying, hey, have you updated yet? And they'd send us new information. But we talked to them also so often as a team, but it just gave us the opportunity to do a quick look. If you said, hey, Scott, what do we know in Timbuktu? I could say, well, I know we have this operator, 3 or 4 operators with this amount of capacity coming online that was available to us.
Sure.
And we could do additional diligence from there.
Yeah. So when did you leave there? I mean, you were there for how long in total and then you left?
5.5 years. So we're in 2021, I believe. Yeah.
So right around the end of COVID, you were type of punching out?
21, 22. Yeah. So what year? 20. Yeah, I've had the business for about 2.5 years now. So yeah.
Okay. And when you did it, what was the goal? Like, did you just I liked what I was doing before I left and started my own thing. I was just drawn to go do something. I'm still friends with almost everybody that's at the old company I was at, right? So it's not like some people leave companies because they're not happy. I just left because I was kind of done building everyone else's dream. I just thought it was time to build my own, right? So why did you step away?
Very much the same. I'd figured I had worked in sales, and I think sales is a great platform for anyone to learn business. Because we're dealing with numbers, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with engineers, and what we did, and you're having to drive an element of business is very entrepreneurial in a way, depending on the roles that you're playing or you have. So I'd done sales, and then I stood up, I'll say, areas of organizations in large groups like Microsoft and Oracle, and the exposure that you get to all these other teams and mentors and people. I mean, so you learn a lot along the way. After I did the role in site selection, I said, this is a great time. I've seen some of the challenges that operators outside of the US, Europe, Latin America, Asia were having integrating into the hyperscalers. And that seemed like a really interesting opportunity for someone to step out and saying, hey, I've lived my life as a hyperscaler for a little bit. Now I can go to someone like yourself as a colo operator and
you could help them win.
Yes.
Because you understand it from the
go-to-market plans, take a look at their technical details, help them walk through a few things, their cadence with the hyperscalers, what the hyperscalers look for, that type. Not every hyperscaler looks for the same thing, right? But at least start framing it up and then taking the market for them.
So that's awesome because—
that's how I started. That was the intent of the business.
So it's funny because mine was a little bit similar to that. When I started— I started DCAC, not because the industry needed a conference. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just felt like I needed a better one, right? And when I told you, when we stepped away from what we were doing, we were originally going to start a manufacturer's rep firm.
Right.
And I'm not saying, boy, how lucky are we that we didn't do that, because equipment is a tough side of the game to be in on.
It's challenging for sure.
I see us playing in that space at some point, but only if it brings value to our customers, right? For us, the need that I had was I had a really hard time getting owners reps. If, the business was getting windfall opportunities, it was scaling so quick that I had to be able to scale my labor force without having to go guarantee new full-time employment opportunities for these people because it was cyclical. What happens if 9 months later that program's done? I don't want to fire somebody. Yes. So the owner's rep model, this outsourced staffing model, staff augmentation, that was my blind spot. So you were seeing it from the delivery side. We're like, how come these operators can't get their shit together and deliver this program for the hyperscalers? You do it all the time. It's easy. And I was like, how come I can't get any of these owners reps to give me pricing in, 24 hours? I can't, and I was just looking at all these things and I realized what I just need to do is I need to standardize on labor and figure out how I can make it easier for people to make purchasing decisions. That's it. But I didn't leave. I left because I saw a need that I could offer value to. That sounds like the same reason.
A need and opportunity for sure. Right. Yes. That's exactly why I left. I had I loved my team, and I'm still connected with a lot of the folks at OCI. If they leave OCI, I'll stay connected with them. They're fantastic people, and Microsoft too. But I would say the relationships at Oracle on my team that I've built and developed, I hope to have for a lifetime.
Yeah, for sure. I've collected a lot of really important relationships in my life through this industry. A lot of my best friends in this industry are in this industry. Right. And I've done a lot of amazing things with people that I've worked with and worked for in this industry. And I remain friends. I mean, you were telling me how you and Anthony did 100K together. Like, was that last year?
No.
2 years ago, whatever it was?
That was a couple years ago.
But you guys weren't working together. You was probably working for me by then, right?
But it was a poorly planned, amazingly executed.
Imagine that. We have a Marine and an Army officer. What could go wrong?
It was horrible.
You guys started training for 100K 2 weeks in advance, probably?
2 months.
Oh, okay.
2 months in advance. So
that's not so bad.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
We finished. Yeah. There was a bit of pain afterwards, for sure.
That is, for people that don't know, you guys did Bandera, right?
Yeah, the Banderas 100K. Yeah.
And it's a 64-mile race. Bandera, Texas is what they call the hill country of Texas. It's like John Wayne filmed his movies there and in Hondo, right? It is some of the most rugged terrain in all of Texas.
It sucked.
Listen, that race is the only race on the Montrail Cup in the state of Texas, and it's a USA Track and Field Olympic qualifier. My kids were running that 25K since they were 9.
I had no idea all those stats. I had no idea, right? I just
knew the hardest race in Texas.
I wanted to do it, right? I called Anthony one day. I said, hey, we were talking. I said, hey, I'm going to do this race. He's like, yeah, let's do it. What do you think? 25, 50K? I'm like, no, 100K.
Yeah, why not?
And he paused for a minute. He's like, let's do it.
Yeah, he's like, more tacos. Let's do
it.
He's a savage. He'll go do whatever.
He is. And he barely trained.
Yep, that sounds about right.
And he just head down, moved on. I loved it.
He said he wanted to do it again after that. That was the part. I was like, how was he? He goes, I want to do it again, but I want to train.
Yes.
It's hard. I've never done the 100. I've done the 50, and it just hurts. You're not going to, you can train all you want. In fact, you'll probably overtrain. You might as well just go and take your beating on that mountain. Do you agree?
Take a beating. Yeah, 100%. It teaches you a lot about yourself. And not only that, you see, I mean, what I love about and I've done several ultras of similar, that in Washington State and in Tahoe, the people that you see there, it's from all walks of life and what they're experiencing, and what they're going through, and when they injure themselves or when they just don't quit.
I'll tell you this, when I was at Bandera 1 year, I hurt myself right before the race because I did it like 9 or 10 years, right? Yeah. And 1 year I went out there and I helped set up the course. So I went out there like, 4 days before the race, and I started watching all the history and all the people that were showing up, and I worked the race, right? And what people don't realize is those are races in which no one's coming to rescue you if you're on the back end of that mountain.
It's horrible terrain. It really is.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
So like, you could fall, you could cry, you could have your pity party. You take all the time you want. But
you got to get up and move because the coyotes are going to find you.
That is a damn fact, right? And those 100Ks, you're out there for 24 hours, right? How long did it take you?
It took us 18.
That's really good.
So the first 32 miles was 8. We did in 8 hours because Anthony was, running like a crazy person. So I had to try to keep up. He was going nuts. It blew me away how fast he was running, because I'm all about slow and steady.
Yeah,
there's no fast in me when it comes to running, especially long distances. And then the last was 10 hours, right? The pain set in a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, you could be out there if you don't have the right gear, if you don't have the right this. I've done that race where it was straight raining the whole time. I've done it where it was.
We got up to the mountain the first day, and it was cold, drizzly, rainy, windy. And I'm like, where the hell are we? I had no idea that Texas did that, especially, yeah.
I ran 1 year where I had a baseball hat on and I had sweatsicles coming off my hat because it was freezing while you're running, right? And then all of a sudden the sun comes up and it shifts like a dime, right? But I don't know where I was going with that run. I forget where I was going with that run, but I know that those types of events that you do, they represent the relationships that transcend your job, right? So the relationship you have with Anthony, I have a lot of relationships like that in this industry where I've raced with lots of people in this space. I've done all kinds of different things. It sounds like you have too. 100%, yeah. And I find that those are the shared suffering, the pressure.
You learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about yourself, right? At what point, I have aspirations to do a 100-miler. I want to do it.
Go do the Hard Rock or the Western States or Leadville or something like that.
Leadville, maybe not. But
that's the real one.
Yeah. It's the real, the elevation's going to get you. The Western States I thought about for sure. But there's got to take a little bit of training and just qualify for it, right? To show that you can actually do it. And I think it might be a lottery. So
there's a bunch of qualifying races for them.
So
people do them down in like San Diego where you're at sea level just because it's an easier labor than at altitude, right? And you're typically like, the fastest times I've ever recorded were doing like the Super Seal and Silver Strand Beach, or when you're at sea level with an ocean breeze, you could labor your body way harder.
It's great, but if I'm going to do 100K in elevation, you need to train in elevation because it creeps on you fast. You know, I did a 36-miler in Tahoe, and I thought I was really fit at the time. I could run for days. It felt. And then I hit the mountain. And within a mile and a half, I really started questioning my life decisions. Going up the mountain for 6 miles, it's at 10,000 feet. You're like, what?
There's a buddy of mine that did it, and he DNF'd his first time at Leadville.
Yeah, I understand that.
And he was a savage of a man. Yeah. And I've raced with him, and he's ran me into the ground.
Yeah.
And watching him not be able to make it really opened my eyes.
Put some doubt in your mind. Yeah.
Because I'm like, if he can't make it, because like, and then
might have been just the day for him. You never know.
It was. He's made it since. He's finished. But that same year, I was reading a story about this woman who broke every record there, and she had a baby 3 weeks before the race, so she stopped to breastfeed at every aid station.
She's amazing,
and she still broke the record.
She's amazing
for women. Yeah, she's incredible, that lady. But going back, these relationships that we build in this industry is what we're talking about.
You bet.
And what you did is you took this collection of all these skills you learned from the military on. Can I ask another question? Did you go to the I went to college for 1.5 years, almost 4 whole semesters before I realized that, what it's saying for me. And I enlisted in the military, and I was gone fast.
School in general wasn't really for me. I love to learn. I love to learn.
It's funny you say that.
And then I did some college. Should I say this? I haven't never finished, right? I've got work. Yeah. But it never let it hold me back anything. And I joined the military and learned a lot of different things. But every role that I had was an opportunity for me to learn something new, right? So
I think that is an advantage, though. And like, I have 2 kids in college right now. And I know you've put a couple through, right?
Yes, 2.
So my thing is I'm glad that they're there. I'm glad that experience in their life where they get to go party by themselves,
sure,
all those things. But I could tell you, like, I think that if I had to pick from one of 3 categories right now, and I'm really focused hard on Gen Z right now, okay? And I'll tell you why. There's only 4 generations in the workforce today. There's the baby boomers, Gen X, which is us, Gen Y, which is the millennials, and then Gen Z. And those Gen Zers will, before the end of this year, outnumber the amount of baby boomers in the workforce. So Gen Z is what I have to focus on. That's 18 to 24. That's the future group because they're the digital pioneers. Right. They were born and raised with software, smartphones, applications for social media, the World Wide Web, or the internet. They had that from birth, right? So, I mean, Amazon.com launched their website in 1994. That's before Gen Z was even started, right? So we're coming to a point where that's going to be the generation that's coming into the workforce, and they were the first users and the greatest adopters of emerging technology from a consumer basis.
Sure, of course.
And they're going to be the ones that are going to be probably working through a lot of the things that we have going on in this industry. So I'm looking at it going, what's the best thing for Gen Z right now to get into our industry and make a difference? And I'm glad that you mentioned that you didn't finish. I finished because it was a promise to myself that I made before I went into the military. I was like, I'm not quitting school. I just fucking hated school. And I felt like my grades in school only reflected my interest, not my intelligence.
Sure, of course.
So if I liked it, I without hard work would get an A. If I didn't like it, regardless of how easy it was, I just didn't care, and I'd get a C or a D or whatever the minimum was to keep people off my ass, right? So Gen Zers are a completely different monster. Your kids are Gen Zers, probably between 1997 and 2012 is when they were born.
95 and 99, yeah.
Okay, so you have a millennial and a Gen Z. And that way that the vehicles, the way that how they communicate, the technologies they use, and the ways that they use them are different, right? And I'll tell you, I'm trying to figure out how do we solve our industry's problems regarding power without recruiting a better demographic of people, and people that have no limitations of the construct of what the capabilities of an industry may be, specifically around power, right? So I'm trying to break down this industry in a way in which we can appeal to that group. And I'm calling, guys like you and going, hey, where are you hiring? Where are you finding talent? How are you bringing them in? Like, is when you were running Oracle's DC PM team, were you looking for college grads only? Were you looking for trades backgrounds first? Were you looking for military backgrounds? Or were you looking like if they could put fog on a mirror, if they're standing in front of it enough, we'll take them?
Yeah. So great question. I did participate in the veteran internship program that we talked about. Anthony helped start, really drive that. That was great, getting amazing people that didn't really have a background in what we were doing, but had, a specific mindset, ability to learn. I will say integrity, character,
discipline,
discipline, and they were coachable,
work ethic,
and you could say, hey, go do that, go learn that, and they'd get it done without question.
Those were the military veterans?
Yes.
Okay, and what else did you have?
And then I did participate in the college recruitment and interviewing, and I didn't hire them because they were all really focused on a lot of the software elements, which I didn't do. I'm a front-end kind of guy. But what amazed me is how intelligent these kids were. It blew my mind on what they were building, what they were doing, what they're involved in, what they did in extracurricular activities, how busy they were, how their minds worked. And I had to, because I was not a software guy, I said, hey, our conversation could be a lot different. Don't care about your coding. Don't care about any of that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about other things of life and other aspects of Oracle and everything else. And I'm going to learn some amazing things talking to these kids that were so dynamic. I love the conversations. And there were kids from all over the world. It was just really fantastic. But how did I hire and what did I do?
What were you looking for? What did success look like? If you were like, hey man, recruiters, I need you to go find me some people. This is what I want them to have a background in.
So I had a very specific job description that I needed, but oftentimes the people that I brought into the team might have met those role requirements by 20 or 30%.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't their focus.
Yeah.
Like a lot of data center cloud wasn't a focus for a lot of people. And so you bring a lot of people from outside the industry into these spaces. But again, what I really looked for is the person and the culture and the fit and feel of what they were, regardless of what their background was. I think fairly quickly in talking to someone, you'd have a really good understanding if they would fit with your team. And what
was the culture you were trying to achieve then? I mean, as we were starting this thing off, I'm like, there's 5 things you need to have someone was asking me and I had to answer it rapid fire. So obviously if you're not processing it and thinking about it, but over the time, I still feel like I was I'm in the right church, maybe sitting in the wrong pew with these 5, but culture was huge. It was I said purpose and culture number 2. And you asked what culture
would have been first for me.
So what was the culture you're trying to achieve there?
I know, sounds good. Teamwork.
Okay.
Right? I wanted someone that had a high integrity. I wanted someone that could come in and was coachable, that would be able to drive elements of the team without getting your feelings hurt about every little thing, which tends to happen on occasion. I wanted someone that, and when their teammate was down, they'd pick the ball up and they'd say, hey, recognize something, saying, hey, do you need some help? I wanted to make sure that whoever this person was, whoever the people that were hired on, that when someone went on vacation, they would all pitch in and take care of each other. I knew that if I had to step out for whatever reason, there are several people that I'd say, can you help? And they just step up and do it. I never had to worry about any kind of backup. I never had to worry about my team being backed up because they all supported each other.
Where did you find that standard at before, or did you have to create it for the first time in your life? Was that something that you saw in your unit in the military as an example?
For myself?
Yeah, like how did you know that that's what success looked like, that that's what your culture needed to have, is people that just, sounds like it was predicated on trust.
You know, like I said, there's areas that growing up in the military, you see that with all the military families, not just with my father and my family, but with other military families and what they did to survive when their significant others were around the world, and what they had to do to come back to support each other. And there's a lot of that with the Navy. I lived in Navy housing for years, so you see a lot of that camaraderie, right? And then being in the military, that was when you talk about unit and what unit means and unity of your unit and that camaraderie. Like when you train for a specific aspect, if you're training from a maneuvering standpoint, and it could be a potential life or death situation, I would say the camaraderie and the trust that you build with someone, even though I never experienced any of that, like never as any kind of wartime situation. When you're training for those, the level of trust that you have with these people is a little bit different. Now, you'll never have that in civilian life because it's just not there, right?
Well, I'm trying to change that, but I hear you.
But you can build a level of trust. Now, it's never going to be life or death. Hopefully, it's not. But if you know, just experiencing that and you're seeing what that trust looks like and what it does to your team and the people that you're working with, that's unbreakable. Those groups and teams are unbreakable.
So that culture, that everything you just described, I agree with, and I learned it born and raised. I was born in a military base. I was raised in a military hospital. I mean, I was raised on military bases, right? Yeah. So like I saw the community differently. Like what I enjoyed living in Eastern Washington as an example is like we had a front door that never got closed or locked in the summertime, right? So it was just a screen door and it closed. And that's just, maybe it's because we felt safe on a military base.
No, in Navy housing, it was our doors were never locked.
Yeah.
They just never were. You didn't have to worry about that because everyone would come and pitch in. Yeah. So we'll just call it that.
Everyone was looking out for each other too, right? But it's funny because it sounds like purpose and culture are pretty important to you too. And culture, you said, was the number one thing. I mean, I'm trying to peel this back because I agree. I think culture is everything. Someone asked me to describe my culture in one word. I'm like, cult. Like I wanted everyone on the outside to want to be in and everyone on the inside being like, we're.
I also wanted to know that I think it's really important that you can have that you can develop what you feel is amazing culture, but the people that are working with you, like that are part of your team, they also have to trust you as a leader.
Sure.
So if they can't, while they're supporting each other, if they don't feel support from you, because you say you take care of your people, first and foremost, that if you're going to be, if someone's like, you're going to stand up and stand in front of the bus for them, that you should be the first person to get hit before your team gets hit. So you can have this really chaotic environment. And there are certain times you get someone in the cloud services, hyperscalers or some other tech firm, it's incredibly chaotic around them, but you've tried to buffer it as much as you can. So your team doesn't really face a lot of that stuff. They can focus on what they need to get done and try to take as much heat as you can. So they're buffered. That's, I think, helps also them achieve success. Also, I think you're giving them the ability to be seen. That's really key. And a lot of them are, and you're going to challenge them saying, hey, I know you're comfortable here, but I'm going to push you outside your comfort zone a little bit. And so you're going to push you into these things. So you can be seen by your executive management and you can, present to them. You're doing all these amazing things from a site selection standpoint, but go present it. I'm going to be there with you. We're going to talk about these things, but you can present it to your executive manager because if you're not seen, and that helps them learn tremendously too in a lot of different ways.
It makes a ton of sense. I think culture is big. I think purpose is biggest. I think the other thing I was talking about was the leaderships. And I say that because you're talking about the other element of it. And that is having all the people that could, left seat, right seat, cockpit cover for each other. Right. And like, I didn't know it. My team just hired someone and I met her for the first time today. In fact, she's a Marine in the reserves, Army intelligence. Did you know that existed?
In the Marine Corps?
Yeah, it's like an oxymoron. I didn't even know that those two words came together.
Yeah, that's weird.
Right, I know. Weird. So she's awesome though. And her only job is retention, like spending time with everyone for growing and developing and retaining.
That's fantastic. Right.
But that's the greatest impact that we can make on culture was, I mean, I have 8 recruiters. Finding people was a problem. Retaining people is the only focus, right? Sure. So like I spend so much time, or I'm like, when I say I take care of people, I don't take care of anybody. I have an amazing leadership team. So I think the third most important thing you have to have leaders.
Sure, of course. My
leaders are doing those things. I give them my commander's intent and let them know what success looks like at the end of the year. Like it's not good enough to just scale by this many, but we need to retain this many. And I don't tell them what to go do. They go and like,
that's why you hire great people. You don't have to tell them to do anything, right?
Look, it's almost unfair how good of leaders that stumbled into our orbit and are now putting their passion, their talent behind what we do, because that's how you go out and you hire someone who, this is a lady whose only job is military intelligence. She's still involved with the branch. She's active as a Ranger, and her number one problem, the most important job that she has the most important job of the company right now is growing and training and developing my entire product. And my product are human beings.
Yeah.
Right. So like if it's not good enough to just recruit some,
they're all the face of your customers too, right? These are all the people that are facing your customers.
Yeah.
So you have to have a good show, right? You have to have a good showing.
And I needed someone that cared about other people. You know what I'm saying? Like that military unit stuff that you're talking about. And not that I couldn't find that in my civilian counterparts. 2/3 of my company are civilians. Half of my management staff are civilian, and it's okay because they believe in our mission. They believe in our purpose. So the means and methods in which we expose them to aren't any different than us when we were being exposed to it the first time.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, the beauty is the best idea always wins. They don't care, right? So, but outside of that,
they're not pitted against each other is what you're saying.
Never.
Yeah, good.
Like we would never do that. So we have, you know, we have purpose, culture, leadership. I do think you need a platform. Like this is a platform for success. Being able to talk, you control. Like this is an opportunity for you as we pivot here. Because look, I want people to understand. Like you and I do a lot of the same things. Do you agree? I mean,
we do. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we're at odds with each other by any means.
Not at all. Yeah.
And it's not just because you're a Marine, right? It's because we'll always. I mean, I'm going to help anybody that reaches out to me, man, woman, Marine, you know, military veteran, not, right?
Coast Guard.
Well, may not help them. No one likes them. No, I'm joking. We had I don't think I have any coasties on my team right now. The best one we had went over to Vantage, but she's still a friend of the business. She's had an opportunity to grow her wings, right? So the thing is you need strong leaders, but you need diversity in all those things that you have, right? And I'm trying to find those thoughts, but you got to the point where you started your own thing. You left, you had built a culture, you'd built a team, and you just had some relentless need or desire to still, even though a lot of people in your role would have been comforted and they would have been very happy staying in that role forever. It's a great role. How many people wanted that job? It was a very important.
It was a great role. Yeah, it was a great role. Great team.
So why in the hell would someone leave such a great role to probably put yourself at risk where you're not making anything compared to what you were making when you first started?
That's the case for sure. Yeah, especially when you walk out the door and you're like, okay, what do I do about health insurance? You know, I walked out eyes wide shut, so to speak.
That's how you have to do it.
I knew what I wanted to do. I'd put stuff down on paper from a business plan standpoint. I had thoughts and ideas on customers and who and kind of the intent. And then I closed my eyes, went to the edge of the cliff and jumped. And, you know, I'm like, wherever I land, I'm going to land.
Now, what were you going to do originally? Were you going to get involved in some of the operations, or was all construction delivery, or like? So
I did get involved in some of the operations because the opportunity came to me.
Yeah.
But majority of it was working for operators outside of the U.S. to look at their go-to-market plans, to look at their sites, to look at their feasibility studies, to take a look at where they're going to look at, you know, for locations for development, help them work through some of those things.
Capacity planning and be like, look, this is if you have this land, you can do this with it.
Sure, I was part of it, and of course I didn't do it all myself. I had partners I worked with. I bring into the conversation, 1099 type contractors that I also worked with. So I did have a framework of who I was going to also utilize if I got into something that was a little more technical over my head, so I can bring in someone that knew what the hell was going on. Right, so I did some of that, but and then also help those operators understand how to integrate with the hyperscalers, how to present to them. Are you going to send an email that says, "Hey, I have 5 megawatts capacity"? 5 megawatts back in the olden days was a lot of capacity. You know, now not so much. But no, that's not how you go about it, because I would say anyone in the world of hyperscale or anyone that's doing site selection, they are so overwhelmed by selecting sites and doing what they do. The job is a lot, and it's a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. But you also get a tremendous amount of vendor fatigue. How many people are constantly calling on you saying, "Hey, I have this amazing product." And especially now, the vast majority of the time, they don't have anything.
Yeah.
Now, unless you're a really well-established provider, right? But if it's land and if you're looking for land and power, you know, half the time when someone's coming to us and saying, "We have this land, we have this power," we'll go, define you have power. Let's talk about what that means. So just getting back to the hyperscalers, that there's a tremendous amount of vendor fatigue that they get when you don't present them something they consume quickly and it meets all the marks. So what are those aspects that you need to present to them, right? And make sure you're going to get it to them and provide them a quick turn, quick look, so they can say yes or no and give you some feedback that might be constructive, that you can change your approach and come back to them saying, "Okay, now you didn't want these 3 points, but I added these other 5 points you said you're really interested in. Does this meet your mark, right? This doesn't make sense for you."
So listen, so back up a little bit. When you first got into it, What was your first data center project? Where were you at with that? Was that an Oracle project? Data center?
No, ever. Oh, my first data center project ever. Go. No, I was a contractor.
Oh, okay. So listen, so when you first were exposed to data centers, like you said, 5 megawatts used to be, that would change a guy's career.
OCI, but prior to that, I was doing like infrastructure build. That's where you get into the data center, you're building out the raised floor, you're building into infrastructure.
For operators or for enterprise side?
Enterprise at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my thing is tell me now, as you put a pin in what you're doing, because we're going to circle back to that.
Mm-hmm.
How much have you seen the change in this industry? And were some of those things also what gave you comfort in mitigating the risk of going away from something very comfortable? I mean, you worked at Oracle, you had an amazing job, you didn't have to leave, and you went off yet and you took this dangerous adventure to go create something. Was there a linear trend or something that you saw, this pattern that you're reading the tea leaves in when you're in the, sitting in a hyperscaler and you realize like, this is going to be the gold rush. I could probably get out and do something or plant my own flag or have my own shingle now, or like, how did you see the industry transitioning? And let's maybe pause altogether. Like, where do you see it going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to pause and focus on that question?
Whichever one you want to. Yeah.
Just really quickly, and the first part of the question is this: what I saw, tea leaves or whatever. I saw a lot of operators coming to the market. Tremendous amount of operators coming to the market as the U.S. developed, moving to Europe, then moving to APEC, moving to Latin America. There are a lot of operators coming to the market, and they're standing up some great product, but they just didn't have the know-how as they're developing their teams to understand how to work in the U.S. market. Different culture. No matter where you go around the world, it's going to be different how you approach business, right? So that was one of the key things I saw. I said, I can provide these folks some assistance. In terms of where I think it's going, that's really interesting because, the things that where we started as a company to where we're at now. Now, I still do some of the aspects working with operators, but I don't do it for compensation, right? I do it for access.
Sure.
So my little team tracks about almost 90 operators around the world into a tool from a capacity standpoint. So we know what's going on. And with that, we get a lot of information. We work with these people, we get access to their sites. We understand some of the nuances of those markets, what they're dealing with, where they're going, from legislation that's going to be passed or issues that they're having with power, which everyone does, issues that they're having with supply chain or not, right?
Does.
Yeah, right. So in some of those aspects, so we get to talk about those and build those relationships with operators all around the world, which is fantastic. But to where we're at today, how many people, what is the demand that's really impacting the U.S. and the amount of developers that aren't, and capital partners that are not data center folks. They're like, we have capital, we want to use it. We have a piece of property, we have an old building, whatever it may be, and that could be a data center. And we have power. Well, you really don't. You really don't, because the dynamics have changed in terms of, obviously densities of racks and power, the densities and how that impacts the rack weight and how that impacts the infrastructure, how that impacts the structure, how that impacts the architecture. There's a lot of different things that are impacting. So you have to give sometimes these people some bad news saying, hey, this building's going to suck. No, an operator's going to come take it and they're just going to knock it down. I know you love it, but they're going to knock it down and rebuild it because the only thing that's important to them is that land and that power.
Yeah.
Right. So where it's going, it's a little chaotic right now in terms of how many people that at least over the past 3 or 4 weeks, and I tell some of my friends, the amount of capital and landowners that are reaching out to us for assistance on, we have sites, we have power, and we want to build data centers. Well, yeah, but it's in the tundra. It doesn't make sense. Well, because they're hearing, what they're hearing is that AI doesn't matter. AI doesn't matter from the geo perspective. Maybe it does or it doesn't. But you still have to be close to some kind of metro so you can hire people, unless it's just going to be operated dark. There's got to be certain aspects that you have to be able to get people to operate and or maintain your space, unless everything's going to be flown. And that's going to be too expensive. So there's certain aspects that when they're not used to living in this space, that you have to ask them some harder questions, right? To help them understand that, one, they could have an amazing asset, or two, it's really not that great. So shift your focus. And let's go over here, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunities for people that are unfamiliar with this industry for you to navigate them through and help them understand the value of what they have or may not have, right?
Yes.
And that's all, there's 5 phases of a data center life cycle. And that first phase, that development requirement phase, is you spend a lot of time in that consulting phase, it looks like,
100%. Yes.
is it focused primarily and only outside the U.S., or do you do a lot of that stuff?
No. So through partnerships that we do have, that I have through a JV, we've secured almost 3,000 acres on the East Coast, that we have, that we're doing diligence on yield studies, power and yield studies right now, just to make sure.
Like a quantum loophole type of model where it's like a wholesaler for the wholesale type of thing? Like a master plan campus?
So there's certainly master planning, but the intent is to take it to someone like a developer or cool operator to sell it off, right? So we're not going to be developing. I'm not developing it. I'm not going to build it. I'm not going to operate it.
Are you going to try to get them through abatements or, entitlements?
100%, yes. So make sure it's entitled, and make sure we do this yield studies, make sure we understand power and the path to power, and then some of the other various aspects too. So there's some work that we do, and we work with capital partners, bringing in capital, so we can do that level of work, because it can be fairly expensive, take some time to get that done. And then we do that work in that diligence. Some of the opportunities, we are just trying to sell the raw land. We know there's power. We know there's things. So here's a parcel, 113 acres, 200 acres, 500 acres. That's along this corridor. And there's a lot of development going on that's adjacent to everything that's going on in Virginia. That's what we're trying to do.
Are you seeing any new markets emerging from these studies? Like, obviously, there's a lot of stuff in like West Texas. So there's all kinds of crazy places where AI data centers are going to be popping up that are non-latency sensitive markets, clearly, right?
Yes.
So I'm seeing that too. Are you seeing any major markets? Start with the state. I mean, are you seeing Alabama picking up? Are you seeing Iowa picking up? I mean,
just saw a recent report, that there's going to be a large data center developed in Mississippi.
Yeah.
So that actually surprised me.
Me too.
So and it's large. It's like 500 megawatts a gigawatt or something like that. So it's a fairly substantial development. But what's driving that is the cost of power, the cost of land, tax abatements, tax incentives. There are so many people that see what's happened in Virginia and a few other markets are like, hey, we want those tax dollars. We want that industry. We want the additional infrastructure built. Because when someone comes to the market, you're building a gigawatt campus. Well, one, that's a 10, 15-year project, whatever it may be. Two, they're developing the infrastructure to support some serious additional growth for small businesses and other enterprise that's going to help that area grow, that region grow from an economic standpoint.
I agree. It'll be interesting to see what happens when some of these other markets. Okay, so as an example, some of the, I read a lot of reports. I'm sure you read all the same mags, and I was looking at one that said in 5.5 years from now we're going to need another 60 gigs of power here, and
how?
Well, natural gas will be the largest provider of that. Maybe it's 55 gigs, but anyways, it's a lot more than what's solar.
Are you saying that's just for data center though?
Data center. Yeah. But our data center metric, which is at 3% of the total demand of energy in the United States right now, will triple to, close to 9 in the next, by the same amount of time, by 2030. Right. So we are getting more efficient. We're going to be having higher density footprints, a tighter topology of how we build these things up, but the volume of aggregate power won't change. Just the layout of space that's required, and maybe, whatever cooling permutation we have, regardless of which market, is going to have some sort of nuances to it. But at the end of the day, man, we're going to go into places where data centers weren't being built.
No, but so the risk around that is that the infrastructure needed to do some cogen or something won't be there, or might not be there. Might be 5 miles away, 10 miles, or 20 miles away. So that's time, right? Time.
But you're not waiting for the utility. You're waiting for the engine providers to give you the engine so you go prime, right?
No, what I'm saying is that if you have that engine on site, you still need gas to come to it. Right?
Yes, that's true.
That infrastructure for gas isn't there. Like we were on a site and it's 10 miles away. Okay, it's got to be cut in. You got to get it there, right?
Yeah.
So how long does that take? Right? It could take quite a while. Now it might be shorter time frame than a utility getting something from a transmission and substation and switching location built out, but still, that's time and effort that if someone's looking at it and they're not doing their true assessment and what all the infrastructure that might support that cogen, that gas cooling, whatever, then you're going to start your planning and realize, well, this is across the mountain. It's over on the other side of the mountain. It's going to really take 5 years to build out.
What do you think the adoption rate of SMRs is going to look like?
Interesting. Because we were talking at lunchtime, right?
Yeah.
There's a group that I'm working with, IP3 International, and you'll see a press release of our partnership here soon. And working with these gentlemen, this team, Mike Hewitt, we're in the middle of planning a couple of energy parks, right? So focused on, I'm going to be a nuclear adjacent, because if you're going nuclear adjacent to some of these sites that you don't have to worry about the NIMBY issues, not my backyard issues, right? So the people are used to nuclear, and no different than what you're seeing some of these large hyperscalers doing. They're getting power behind the meter, these large nuclear sites, and not have to worry about transmission, some of the other costs associated with that. And you see the news that's coming and being turned up saying, hey, you're doing all this, you're getting all this power, but now you're impacting all the other tax-paying people because you're not paying for any of these things. So that seems to be a challenge, right? I can understand that. So
I didn't think about that. I didn't think about the competition from infrastructure. I just normally am used to like I would imagine that Virginia in theory wouldn't be upset having an SMR within their region.
I don't think they would be, and I don't think they are going to be. So we're looking at, so anytime we take a look at a piece of property, we try to do a fairly dynamic assessment on what we can do on site. Yes, utilities there. It's going to take 5, 7, 10 years, whatever it is going to be to get there. Hopefully not that long. Now, along with that, depending on how much property we have there, can we pull off 100 acres for an SMR? Well, if you have the right team that's used to doing, to go all the regulatory efforts, to get all the permitting done and understand all the legislative things that you have to do to get approvals for this SMR and all the risks associated, they'll take that on. IPT will take all that work on. You don't have to worry about it. It gets built. And then, of course, there's some other processes they have to go through. But 100 megawatts to generate, or 100 acres to generate a gig versus, as we were talking, there's 30,000 acres in Australia being utilized of land to generate 6 gig of solar, which is, it's part of the plan, right? At the end of the day, I don't know if it's not the plan, but it's part of the solution overall for areas that are energy deficient.
Yeah, but I guess Australia probably is an exception because it's probably a lot sunnier there than it is in most places.
There are certain areas that are fairly sunny there, for sure.
But it's still nighttime there. Half the day's dark where you can't use that stuff. And there's plenty of days in which I'm sure they don't have a lot of sun too, right? Just like, and the other problem with solar from a bridging perspective is you can't really store that power. So on those sunny days, you're great. But if it's not sunny, then you have to rely on something else. If it's not windy, then you can't be wind.
No, I do think some of the energy storage solutions are getting better, but I think.
Do you think the technology will catch up to that before nuclear gets adopted?
No, not at all.
Me neither.
Oh, no way.
I just don't see it's worth the investment.
No. So the group that we're working with, they've done this, and they're working all over the world right now. So, and so 5 to 7 years, right? If something gets signed and they can get the planning, say 5 to 7 years before they were able to turn up an SMR. Really, the biggest thing from what I'm hearing is like manufacturing of the small nuclear reactor. So that's going to be one of the challenges is from a manufacturing standpoint. Once you get that into play, it's going to be easier to deploy. But there's also issues that you have to educate. If you're not going to an area that is used to nuclear being in their backyard, so to speak, there's an effort of education that you have to do because people think 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl or some other weird stuff like that's it's totally different.
I always drop this on every podcast when we talk about nuclear, and one day I'm hoping to get Oliver Stone on this podcast. He produced a movie a few years ago called Nuclear Now. Have you watched that one on Apple TV? And I encourage everybody that's listening. I don't do Apple. You're a Marine.
I'm Android, yeah.
Yeah, but you could still watch this movie. It'd probably
blow up my phone, but I'll try.
Well, listen, I can understand why Marines don't understand how to use Apple.
It's challenging.
It's an ASVAB thing probably, but the reality is you got to watch it, borrow it from a friend, but it does really do a good job of deconstructing the dichotomy between nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. And it does talk about, the various methods of energy that we use and what's actually harmful to people. It's funny because he cites and he gets Greenpeace and the Sierra Club to come out and be like, hey, we were the ones and, in the early 80s to tell you no nukes of any kind, but we messed that one up. Let's fix this because it's untenable. It's we can't scale as an industry based on the current adoption rate of emerging technology because the power behind technology is becoming so intense and so dense that we're honestly, for the first time ever, staring down the barrel of a limitation of technology.
You bet.
And we've never had that. The last time we've had to look at the limitation of technology in an incremental basis was when we were doing minutes on the phone.
Well, when have you seen like densities, rack density go from 80 megawatts to 100 megawatts to 120 megawatts to 140 megawatts in a 2-year span? It's just unheard of. It's just unheard of. So there is a site we was working on last year. Customer came and said, we need this space build up for 80 megawatts or 80 kilowatts per rack, whatever. So, and then we're working on something now like we need to plan for 140 kilowatts per rack. Well, that's a massive jump. So if you're an operator and you've built, how do you build to sustain a model that can achieve meeting these objectives over time?
It's got to be
that's challenging.
Flexible enough in the design to be able to adapt that scalability of density, right? And that's almost impossible right now, right? So everyone's building as ahead of the curve as they can, but by the time they're done building what they designed, it's already outdated of a design, right? And maybe on the mechanical side, and I think the nuclear element of what we're doing, we're seeing it with, in Pennsylvania, there was a program with Cumulus that I think Amazon bought that building and the reactor across the street from it, right?
It might have been in the news, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. It was something that I think Data Center Knowledge and Data Center Frontier did a good job of getting ahead of with their narrative. But I see, I don't see manufacturing as the barrier. I do think what you said was the NIMBY, not in my backyard, and not over there either. And it's just because there's a level of understanding that came from propaganda years ago that really calloused our minds to believe that all things
it scares people, right? It really does, right?
But if you look at it, and that's why I say nuclear now, you have to really take a look at the nuclear Navy is 76 years old, 76 years this year, I believe. And they have over 500 core reactors that they put together. They're through fission reactors. And they've refueled multiple, probably 130 refuelings. There's probably 30 to 40 different types of permutations of nuclear propulsion plants. And I would say we've probably had no less than 500 reactors in the fleet in the 75 years. Have you ever heard of a reactor? So these people that are worried about the reactors being close to them, if they're around the ocean and they're on the coastline, there's a reactor sitting submerged off the coast of our country at all times as a nuclear deterrent or a safety net for national security. But we have we have 70 to 80 warships that are just submarines with reactors, not to mention the carriers that have multiple reactors in them, right? So we have a fleet of very sophisticated technology that hooks up. When we pull into other countries, would it surprise you to know that we hook up for shore power, but we move the needle to the left because we don't want to stop steaming, so to speak, right?
Of course.
So we could put power on a grid when we go some places. So people don't realize, especially in Northern Virginia, being where Norfolk Naval Station is the largest naval base in the world, has a lot of reactors sitting right off the coast. I think people just need to open their eyes. I'm hoping the more that we remove the baby boomers from from the workforce, because they're the ones that they were born and raised around the TV. They were born and raised where they watched the news at night, and whoever that was talking was essentially another burning bush, right? And those people were able to, corporate media is where they got all their truth and their news, and the Gen Zers aren't like that at all. They don't believe in corporate media. I mean, corporate media is eroding because people are learning to find alternative methods to getting their news. And podcasts are one of them. Social media is another. But there's just another group in which the relevancy of the stuff that these people are talking about, it'll continue to go down as the baby boomers continue to retire and move into other areas, because other people like us, I mean, how often do you watch the news?
I don't.
Take a number. Who does? I mean, there's certain demographics that are like, not anymore.
It's just not anymore.
It's not, because it doesn't do anything to help me. In fact, the reason why I don't watch the news is because it only shows me history. The reason why I listen to podcasts is because I'm typically only talking about the future, and I'm only focused on the future.
Of course.
So I stopped watching the news a long time ago, right? Because there's nothing that comes out of that makes me feel like a better person. I wish the news inspired me, but it doesn't. Podcasts do. People that have great stories like yours that, was born and raised by a genius of a father because he was a sailor, must be. And then you decided that you had to go be a bullet sponge no matter what. But here you are, where you led Oracle site
I love
selection.
crayons.
I love the flavor of them, But you went to one of the largest hyperscalers or the largest cloud providers in the world, and you led that. And then you're building your own team, you're leading your own team, and your team is really focused on innovation and try to advance the industry. And there's so many changes taking place in this industry that it's almost impossible. You could turn your head to the left for just an hour or two too long, and you've already missed something that just iterated.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I find it how fast the industry is moving and changing is so much different than when I first stepped into Oracle, and what it was to what it is now, and how fast it's changing, and the demands on the market. So I read a report recently on test state of Texas alone. I said, I'm hoping I don't have the numbers wrong. They're saying by the year 2030 or 2030, they needed 130 gigawatts of power for the state.
2030.
Yeah. That's and they don't have the capabilities to generate that much power.
I think that's
so. What are you going to do? Right.
So that brings us to a whole other discussion that you and I were having, because we're both sitting here on front row talking about power. And, you know, there's solar and there's wind, and we talked about that. And, you know, I have other people that are coming on to talk a little bit more. I'm going to be doing a podcast series after DCAC called The Road to Nuclear, and it's going to be bringing on people from outside the industry as well that are going to.
There's someone I'm going to introduce you to. You need to talk to them.
Look, I'm going to hammer this podcast series, not only entirely devoted only to that, but there will be a consistency on that where I'm going to add a whole nother element of what we're doing, just because I want to help push that rock uphill on what's happening on the nuclear side. Right. But we talked just briefly about the emergence of two industries that are literally just colliding right now, and that's oil and gas and mission critical. And it's really introducing us to a lot of people that are focused mainly on engines. You know, so how much have you had to learn about engines in the last year? More than
ever, right?
Yeah.
And the challenge is that's just getting any kind of engine whatsoever, right? So it's just anything in the market because they're being consumed.
So are you
at a ridiculous pace?
What are some, like, I agree with that. The reliability in what they tell you they're capable of producing. Do you have credit? Have you found engine providers that you have credibility in for that respect yet? Where they're consistent to what they say they could project to what they can build? Okay.
Yeah. No, it's challenging for sure, right? So you have to dig into the details and start asking some different questions and it's really starting to push at some of the data points that they're providing and ask for some harder proof, right? And something to have in the market that might be working so you can see it.
What have been some of the things that you've seen in trying to integrate? You're on the first side, which is people don't make purchasing decisions into those buildings of that land until they lock down what it takes to get power there. And right now, we used to just wait and figure. Honestly, the operators used to be like, don't worry about that. Take care of the building and getting the permits for it. We'll get the power. And now the power is part of the building, and that's now part of the product that we have to go solve for as well. If you think about it, we talked about this, but the last time that we had constraints and limitations in using incremental measurement to our product, it was when we had minutes and a phone where we were, remember when you had a phone plan that you only had so many minutes if you rolled over or, you know, you go over, and then that went away when we got into data, and we already have cloud's already utility. People are buying it. You buy cloud, buy so much per month and all those things. It's
what the phone is, right? Yeah.
Cloud is already, cloud is the fifth utility. The first one was plumbing. The second was electricity. The third was connectivity.
It's also my most expensive utility.
Well, that's because if you add all four utilities up together, they make the fifth utility, which is the cloud, right? And can you imagine not having access to your cloud?
No, but sometimes it'd be nice.
Yeah. Well, that's the most, like in the fifth industrial revolution, which we just started, it's designed for us to have a healthier, more harmonious relationship with machines and technology, meaning Gen Z, born and raised on it. It's Goldilocks. It's too hot, too cold before it's just right. And Gen Z's already getting to the point where, like, not only do I give a shit about this technology, I mean, they're going to always use technology. They just won't use it as much because they had it their whole lives. And
they'll use it differently.
Well, think about this. When you and I were born and raised as kids, like,
do you remember when the BlackBerry came out?
I loved that BlackBerry.
Oh,
I'd go back to it right now if they had one.
Or what was the one that was just you could just do
that was like a Dell made something.
Yeah, just a calendar, right? It was just, this is so great.
Pilot.
Yes, and you could attach it to your laptop, right?
Yeah.
That was amazing. I remember that coming out, right? Yeah.
I think that I was right one step behind some of that stuff because, like, I loved watching that new technology roll out, and I'd see if it stayed for 3 to 6 months or if someone else rolled something out to beat it. And then if not, I was like, all right, I'll get in, you know, but
I always have my pencil and notepad with me.
Yeah.
I always do.
I'm old school, but sometimes it's nice to not have to carry a pen and a piece of paper with you sometimes as well. But, like, there's so many changes in the way that we're using technology. And a lot of these, I mean, I was reading all these Gen Z statistics in which they're less likely to get married. They're less likely to buy homes because they want to be nomads. They want to be able to be like, look, don't get me wrong. They're still going to make money and give a shit about their money, but they're not,
of course,
straining it in an asset that doesn't make money for them. And that is a home, right? So they're like, why would I do that when I could just rent and leave anywhere I want to, whenever I want to? I can move in 2 years from now and I don't have to worry about selling a home. I just wait for my lease to go up. And I could still invest all that money into something else. It could probably be a digital currency or something else, and they're still making their money. But I'm watching these trends and I'm like, there will be, you know, this huge, the fifth industrial revolution is probably going to last 40 to 50 years, they predict.
Interesting. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's incredible, right?
Generation, basically. Yeah.
Yep. And well, I mean, it depends. Look, there's some authors, that believe that the fifth industrial revolution hasn't started. There are others that are like, yeah, we've been in this for 2.5 years, right? So like, you really have to kind of figure out which religion you follow. But if you follow certain trends, and I've picked up on a few things where I'm really paying attention, I'm watching the market shift because of Gen Z, and as they enter our labor force, they're going to have a greater impact on what we do, because you'll also see our industry, which is, do you know when the very first data center was ever built?
No, you were telling me earlier, but yeah.
1945, built for and funded by the U.S. government in World War II to support national defense and intelligence. Imagine that.
Right.
The very first application and use of a data center was for the government, right? Every form of emerging technology was pioneered and revolutionized by the government. If you go to the first industrial revolution, Morse code was revolutionized the first war, the Civil War. Without Abe Lincoln being able to hear what was going on the front lines, who knows what would have happened, right?
Sure.
But like, technology has played a massive impact on every industrial revolution as well as every war.
Sure.
So looking at these changes that we're talking about and the changes to society that technology has, knowing that we're at this really emerging time in life in which you and I both see what cloud did to the Internet of Things. It was ripped off its head and did its thing, right?
Yes, you bet.
And that was what cloud did. You were building cloud, and we couldn't build cloud fast enough. And now we have to build AI on top of that.
Right.
And it's not that the emerging adoption rate of cloud has gone down. It's just that AI it ripped off the cloud's head.
But what comes after AI? So I think there are a lot of people that are believing AI will slow down the modeling, the trading, everything else. And I don't believe it, because you're going to continue to, like, applications are going to change, data is going to change, the way people use data is going to change, the way these applications are going to change, are going to be more and more, it's going to be developed. So you're going to need more of that training and modeling from that perspective. AI has been around for a long time. Machine learning has been around for a long time. But the challenge that it has had from a development standpoint is availability of compute power, right? And storage and everything else. So as you've seen more compute power, like everything's coming out from NVIDIA and some of the other manufacturers, it's allowed them to do more and more and more from an AI development standpoint, modeling standpoint. So that is, you're talking 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a bubble. I just don't know. I don't think
we'll see a bubble. I think that you'll see a gold rush in those 3 to 5 years, meaning like, you're already seeing it on the finance and the capital side. Everyone that has money is like, I want in the game. Every person that has a GC license is like, I can build those too. Like, everyone's trying to get into this. And
the amount of people that are coming to the U.S. asking for multi-gigawatt properties is out of control. And so we're all fighting for the same thing. Yeah. Well, the properties I talked about earlier and the other family funds that we're working with that have buildings, either brownfield or greenfield, they say they have, buildings and power. It's a tremendous amount of people just saying, hey, we want this. We see where it's going. We want to take part in it, because we see that's not where they're going to put all their money, but there's going to be an aspect of where they're going to start investing quite a bit of capital, and they're bringing other capital partners. And that's actually one of my roles, is that we work with these family funds, then I bring other capital partners to the mix, so the risk is spread, and then we go from a development standpoint to develop that land.
Well, let's talk about you a little bit more. Why don't you share with everyone that's listening, like, Scott, man, I remember when you first stepped out and did your own shingle, and I'm real happy for you. You brought your daughter to PTC this year, right? And
it's pretty fun to watch.
So you're growing, like, you're building a dynasty type of thing, right? This is a pretty special thing that you get to do. The industry offers us both the opportunity.
Sure. Yeah.
I had one of my kids interning with me this summer, and I hope to have all of my kids at some point. And I've said the same to my management team. I'm like, I hope that all of our kids come work at this place, right? But what is it that you're offering the market today, and how can we help you? Like, how can people discover what you're doing and get a part of what you're doing, and how can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. So we recently went through rebranding that was announced through, that had a great partner.
What was the initial company's name?
It was CloudSphere Consulting, and then we moved to Caddis Cloud Solutions. And there's multiple reasons why we rebranded. There's another CloudSphere out there. So as we grew and we're into more and more of the market,
you bumped into each other.
There's risk around that too. We also wanted to have a name that really highlighted all the different aspects. It didn't box us into just a consulting aspect, right? Because we're doing so much more now. Where we started from just consulting with colos initially, that was a great idea, to where we're at now and how we've grown and matured and the different solutions and partners that we do have. We've gotten way more, like I said, we're in a joint venture with a capital group and a real estate group. We have secured property. I'm working with other capital partners to do various things and securing land with the family funds that I have sites, properties, brownfield, greenfields in US, Europe, and in Canada that we're taking a look and helping them assess those sites because they say, we have these assets. How can we use it? And some stepping through that is we're doing it multiple ways. We could say, hey, yeah, you could take that and take it to market. You have power, 50 megawatts, 100 megawatts, sell it, make some money and get and run. Or you can say, let's take a step back. Let's slow down a little bit. I know you want to make money. It's all going to be there, but we have to do these steps, step 1, 2, and step through these hoops. So you can take a product to the market that's going to create more long-term revenue for you over time.
So you're still kind of doing site selection.
There's an aspect of it too. So we're really focused on power. So when you go into, I think the dynamics of power are really interesting right now because of what's going on. So when you step into these sites and we're working with landowners and you have, let's say you have 1,000 acres somewhere and you're going to do some master planning. Well, the utility can't deliver. They can deliver, let's say, a tranche of 50 megawatts year 2. Well, they can't deliver anything else because they had to build transmission for another 3 or 4 or 5 years. So what do? You call in some of your partners that do cogen, and there might be some gas and other infrastructure to do that. So for some either bridging or primary power, short-term type stuff, I can call my other partner saying, hey, there's 100 acres here that we can take a set aside. Can you do some diligence on this and feasibility study to see if we can drop an SMR there? Could it be approved? Well, yeah, there happens to be a nuclear site 50 miles away. So yeah, that might be an opportunity for us. So we deliver that. So now you have a piece of property that's going to have utility from one of your base load from one of your utilities. You can have some cogen and you can have an SMR there. That might be a little bit overkill, but you have some long-term renewable and sustainable solutions on that site. What does that do with the value of that property for that landowner? It's
exponential.
Exponential. So you can say, hey, landowner, we're going to take these 3 sites here, 2 or 3 sites, and you can sell them to get you some immediate revenue for doing some other things. But these other parcels and this 800 acres that you have, we're going to take that to market. We're going to do our diligence. We're going to do the power and yield studies, look at your power plan, develop a power solution for you as long-term. And then we're going to take it to market and we're going to do a long-term lease on these things, each one of these parcels. Or you can sell it off to someone, but still lease it out. That gives them the ability to do small business applications. You get into the local economics, you work with the economic development councils, you're building training programs for people. You're developing a legacy for that family in that market that they're impacting so many other people's lives. And they're also bringing additional industry to that market. That's something that's really interesting to me.
That's interesting. Was that part of the original purpose? I mean, so you saw... You originally started your business because you saw an opportunity where some of the operators were underserving the hyperscalers and you could figure out how to get them to fill that gap. And then you migrated into this site selection thing for all these money people that are getting into the game and you're trying to guide them into the market.
It's particularly the capital partners, but mainly the landowners, right?
Really?
So landowners, yeah. Because
where are you finding the landowners from? Are they coming up through
some
realtors?
For our joint venture partners that have those, that have the real estate groups.
Is it like someone who has a whole portfolio and like, hey, we own these 200 companies in the United States, go figure out if any of these buildings are worth a shit? Is that what you're talking about?
A real estate partner, that's for the joint venture. So yeah, they'll bring us an opportunity saying, hey, with this landowner, let's talk about building a package or program around them because hyperscalers are talking about this property. They want to take it. They're saying, hey, we're going to give you $25,000 per acre. Or I'm like, or we can do some additional diligence and take it to market for $500,000 an acre, whatever it may be. So we're trying to convince, we're out there through some of these programs trying to convince the landowners to slow down a little bit. Let's do some additional work. It's going to take some capital. We'll bring the capital to the program, and then we'll do this diligence around this site so you can achieve different results long-term for you and your family. Don't get rid of all that. Don't sell all this property. Don't get rid of all that. It's something you've had in your family. You've worked really hard to attain. Let's figure out how you're going to hold on to that.
So that's a really interesting thing. So the approach is to find a healthy and harmonious balance as they're going through these things.
Yeah.
And are you focused mainly on the U.S.?
U.S. and Europe right now, and well, U.S., Canada, North America, and
what are some of the areas? I know I asked you this, and I probably cut you off. But what are some of the areas in the U.S. that you're seeing that, like Mississippi, is an example? What else is like that?
It's interesting. It's obviously it's still going to be some of the top markets that you're working in.
The NFL cities,
right? But the where the data is going to be located has just changed. It's moved south, east, north, whatever it may be from some of those primary markets.
Because they lost power? Because they ran out of power?
Yeah, of course, they ran out of power. The utilities can't really meet demand, so they're doing different things. So you move south, you move east, or whatever it is. And you see some of the markets outside of Manassas, right, that have developed now because there's land there and it's a little bit cheaper. It's not $2 million an acre. Yeah. It's $50,000 an acre. I don't know if that's the right cost or not, but it's different. And the utilities can deliver something over time a little bit quicker.
Do you see a change in the adoption based on deregulated energy markets? Like there's a lot of gigawatt conversations happening in Texas right now.
Everywhere, yeah.
And obviously not everyone's going to be able to do that, but I think a lot of confidence exists where there's enough engine people in this game now to where you kind of have to find, I've sat down with several of them, I'm sure you have too, right? And trying to find one that will lean in on an annuity model-based strategy,
right.
Meaning like, sadly, I feel like some of them are very transaction based because they're used to selling all those to an oil field one time or selling them all to a semiconductor fab plant one time. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But these guys are going to do 400 megawatts in 3 different markets in a year. So if they want like to have those engines ready when they want them, does that make sense? So I am seeing this shift to where they're going to go to places where nothing exists, and they're going to go put primary online until the utility gets there, and they'll sell it back perhaps, or they're just going to run. I'm seeing a lot of traction in Texas. Are you?
Yes, there's a tremendous amount going on in Texas. A lot. That's we're probably myself, my little team, and one of our partners. We have probably working on maybe 6 locations right now in Texas that range from anywhere from 20 megawatts, something small, to gigawatt opportunities.
What like? I met a person the other day who's like, there's so much natural gas in West Virginia as an example. I'm like, I don't think I've built a single data center in West Virginia. I'm sure you didn't do site selection in West Virginia.
No, but I was in West Virginia recently for about 2 or 3 months ago with a partner looking at a site.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
isn't it incredible that those are markets now that we're talking about? And then that's a whole other factor of shit, right?
I have a partner that says they have 10,000 acres, but it's 10,000 acres away.
Where all the moonshine is built?
Yeah, you bet. So you got to be careful what you develop there, but it's 10,000 acres of what? You know? So that's the challenge, is that if you look at, there's going to be, you might have a lot of gas, but all the other infrastructure to support something of that nature is just not there. It's not. So it's going to be one of the challenges. You go to those markets that you have to help build, but that's also why they want you to come there, because we were in Kentucky, myself and another partner, and then my daughter, we were going through some of these areas that have been decimated when they stopped a lot of the mining and everything else. Yeah. And there's no other industry that has come about. But
they probably have transmission and transformers and substations there that are being underutilized, right?
But they're in the mountains, so it's Appalachians and all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit challenging. And then I would say, while they might have power, network is also going to be a bit of a challenge, right? So it's going to be there. But there are other markets that that I think might just take a little bit of time to develop, but they want data centers to land there. They want the tech to land there because it's industry that they've lost and they were trying to recoup somehow for the people. Got miners going from making $60 an hour to $15 an hour in Walmart. What does that do to your family? What does that do for people? I've seen some of the towns that have been impacted by that. It's horrible.
I think that I've seen it too. I did a data center in Northwest Indiana that had a power generation plant there that was a modern marvel. I mean, back in the early 1920s, I think Thomas Edison himself had his fingerprints on that program. And it was built to put power online to support the Chicago World Fair. And that modern marvel of masterpiece technology became public enemy #1 to the EPA because of the amount of pollutants that it created. And that I remember, these large hyperscalers were like, they were only looking at repurposing distressed assets in markets that were now underserved and impacted the communities in negative ways so that they could rebuild those and create another on-ramp to the cloud or another sky. They were trying to figure out how to use the abandoned buildings with the abandoned substations and the abandoned transformers and transmission lines.
It's all going on now today.
Right.
Yeah, reuse, right.
So like, take me around the horn as we're getting ready to bring this, this one home over the next few questions. What I wanted is like, in the next, like in 5 minutes, what is your sweet spot for what you do so that those that are listening know, hey, I need to engage with this guy and this is how he can help me. What is it that you tell them that you're able to provide them?
So right now, this group, outside of tracking and the capacity that we do global. So if the enterprise customer was to come to us, or anyone saying, hey, we are looking for capacity somewhere around the world, we have the partnerships that we understand where it's going and what's going on in the markets. When you say, okay, we know you can scale here, we can help facilitate that, whether it's through the MSAs and commercial negotiations and that aspect, technical reviews and everything. It doesn't matter where it's at in the world. So we can certainly help with that. That's always a part of the business that we still do, right? Helping source and sell capacity for suppliers, and also making sure our customers' needs are met. Second to that, what we're really focused on is development, because there's been a tremendous amount going on in the market. So we're starting to stand up joint ventures with real estate and capital partner groups. And while we're doing this from a development standpoint, we're bringing in power generation, SMRs, cogen type stuff, partnerships. While we're doing that, we're also doing off-grid type solutions, power storage. And then we're starting to get into, if you didn't see it, there was an announcement release. We're working with a group called UltraScale Digital. So that's a partnership that was just announced, and they do some
bunch of Navy guys that run that.
Yeah. Arnold, fantastic group. They do rear rack cooling and immersion solutions. Really interesting thing. They're working with a large chip manufacturer and some other computer manufacturers that are doing some fantastic things. And they're I will say we'll release some project wins soon, which is going to be a great announcement for our little companies. They're doing amazing, and they're pulling us along too, which is fantastic. That's led us to other groups like the IP3 from the SMR standpoint, to a couple of the partnerships, to a group out of Europe that's doing some really interesting genset solutions that allowing their technology to accept multiple type of fuel, whether it's diesel to gas to bio to waste fuel to talk about the ammonia, 90% ammonia, 2% hydrogen solution. Obviously, there's some challenges with that. We're helping to bring them to the U.S. market. And then we're going one step further, which is the super shiny object for me, but it's so interesting. It's called Lone Star Lunar, and it's a group that's doing disaster recovery, but it's through a satellite array that orbits the moon. And it's real. It's actually working in their states here in the states that are utilizing service now signed up for it. And there's some European groups that have signed up for it, and their payloads are already sold out. And they're now selling it for like 2026.
So they're paying for a payload to put something in orbit around the moon?
Yeah, because they have petabytes worth of storage are going to be. Yeah.
So what would it do up there? It's just going to be
storage and disaster recovery solutions. So if
they're putting data centers in orbit around the moon.
Yeah, one of the things we're really going to start pushing for enterprises, where are you storing your encryption keys? Where's it going to go? Land-based, around the moon, but in satellite, yeah. But there's always going to be that transmission. If you had to build that transmission, so they have access to that. But if you're hacked, that's there. It's safe, secure. There's not going to be. So it's a really interesting. And we're also working with other government agencies from
That's incredible that you just said that, by the way, because I didn't realize that when you were first telling me about that. What's it called? Texas Lunar? Or what's it?
Lone Star Lunar.
Lone Star Lunar. So obviously they're from California. It sounds like. I'm joking, Lone Star, but I never heard that concept of, from a security perspective, let's get your data center up in space.
From a storage standpoint, I mean, there are. You
have to worry about cooling.
You have to worry about cooling. Yeah, it's pretty chilly up there, but there's intention to have something on the moon, right? It's in space is one of the most regulated areas and in the world. I don't know if you call it in the world, but one of the most regulated markets. So there's that. And from a security standpoint, it's the shiny object. Working with the team, when I first heard it, I'm like, there's no way this is real, but it is, and it's fascinating to me. So anyone that's in tech, it's going to be something that's going to be a project of mine and my little team. We're going to start focusing on doing some things with some enterprise groups and some government agencies. And that's why I talked to you. I'm going to go to Florida for cybersecurity and talk to a few folks with Lone Star Lunar. Right?
That'd be pretty cool, man.
It's going to be really interesting. Yeah.
So what is it that you tell people you do then for a living?
The main focus I would say is data center assets, securing data center assets for land and power. Right, for development.
Land and power.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And the intention is to find our co-operator partners saying, hey, we have this property. Before we take it anywhere else, I have this property. Here's what we do, our diligence on it, right? And support and try to support our operators, our operator
try
partners.
to connect it to like a Cyrus One to buy that land?
100%.
Okay.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. Or will you sell it directly to hyperscale? Like, hey, Google, you want this? Or something?
Yes. Yeah. We have connections in some of those operators and some of the other groups that might buy, whether it's like a large chip manufacturer, others might buy capacity. So, and we'll offer those opportunities for them to buy the land. But a lot of times they just want they want someone to develop for them, and then they'll come and take that space, right? So that's why we really try to focus on the operators, because they're developing. They're the colo operators to develop the space, and then they go sell to their clients. Now, if I can sell that land and then also bring a client, that's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. What do you see? I mean, you left your big box company where you had your ivory tower and you're a common peasant like me now, where you're a startup of a company, and it's a bloodbath. I mean, like, I love it. I love it.
I do too.
But I've been white knuckling that for 5 years now. My anniversary is 11/1 will be my 5 years.
But you guys have grown tremendously. You're saying you're white knuckle it, but look how far you've grown, how much you've grown, and how many people you're hiring every month, as you're stating what you're doing. So, but I understand the challenges around
scaling.
Right?
Scaling with this industry can make you crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a lifestyle industry though too. I know plenty of people that are in this industry and they have 3, 4, 5, 10-man shops, and they plug along and they only need their one, they need this, and maybe they grow at 5%, 10% a year. But there's so much swell in this space right now that they're just growing with their current clients, because everybody's just sort of clients are growing, right? So they don't have to do much. They're almost in a defensive posture trying to figure out how to scale without running into cash flow problems, right? Because that's the best part, is trying to figure out how much risk you could take while you grow. Do you agree?
Really understanding what the risk is, if you can even put a number to it, or what the but it can change every day. I don't want to get huge by any means. Like I said, I want to create an ecosystem, like 8 to 10 people top, right? If we're going to do something different, like this cool shiny object, then I'm going to stand up something different for it. Really, if it's going to grow, there's some opportunities for us to do some power generation, location, energy parks. That might be something else I stand up and put it under a holding company, but I can't do everything for everyone. Yeah. So where we have our verticals, I want to take our partners and start layering in their services too. That's, I think, the key to the success for us, is that I'm going to start bringing in our partners. They're going to do stuff. I'm not looking for, it's always, there's a way that we're going to start bringing folks in so they have success in these markets too with us. And then, we're going to get this, I'll say, a circular kind of, everything's going to be coming back around to us. So I'll bring you to something, and then eventually bring me to something, and then we'll partner on doing things, right? So that's really what we're trying to do, because I can't be everything to everyone by any means, but I have partners that are amazing that can really build this holistic solution for us.
I think the whole strategy for most people going forward is, there were so many shops that were able to control and manage their degree of scale that they were just hiring all these internal everythings, and then and now they're realizing, like, you can't keep up with that. The demands that you have won't even allow you to go find those people, and then as soon as you have that person, they're going to get poached by another competitor or something.
Also, the risk of hiring too many too fast, and you see that in the markets, that you need them for 6 months to a year, and all of a sudden something stops, and you got to let them go. That's a model that I just don't want to be part of, right? I want to hire smart. Right.
What do you see? I mean, what do you see happening in the next few years in this space? Anything?
Yeah, obviously, it's, I don't know what's going to happen with AI, but if you look at just what's happened the last 2 years, just a year and a half, 2 years, went to GTC, NVIDIA conference, and at that time we're talking 40, 50 kilowatts per rack. And then 6 months later, I'm on a job site that's 85 kilowatts a rack. And now we're in a project that's 140 kilowatts per rack. So where's that density change? Ultra-scale digital, among our partners, they're developing solutions that cool racks 300 kilowatts per rack. So what are you planning for? They're working with these manufacturers to develop these solutions. So where does it stop? At what point? What size of the racks? I mean, so you talk about that, but
what do they standardize on?
But what's the physical impact too? So you start bringing in racks that, are they taller? Are they heavier? What are they going to have? Are you going to be able to accommodate the infrastructure? You're going to accommodate the mechanical? Are you going to accommodate the architectural impacts, the structural impacts? I mean, so what's that going to be?
I think this is the answer. I think that we work in an industry that, although the first data center was 1945, technically in the 50s is when we had our first commercial data center. Believe it or not, it was IBM and American Airlines building something to make it easier to book airplane seats.
Yeah.
But we live amongst the Henry Fords of our time.
Here's some companies doing some amazing things, right? In terms of the dynamic cooling and power and everything else, right? Trying to change the market.
Yes. And those disruptive thought leaders, that's why we have our podcast. That's why we have this platform. So I can give them a platform to have a voice. So it's a David versus Goliath model, because there's too many that's the way we've always done it. And I'm like, well, that's not going to help us innovate and iterate what we're doing. So what I'm trying to say is, I think this industry pivots hard, and I think it becomes mainstream after this election. I think right now everyone's only focused on one thing in this election cycle, and that is, in this news cycle, and that's what's going on in the election. I think that once that's over, the number one focus will be AI. And once people start really peeling back and pressure testing the different layers of AI, and you peel it all the way down, like, what is AI? It's a technology engine, and what do we call those things? data centers.
So with the development of AI, right, and you're going to have more and more facilities, you're talking 20, 30, 40, 50 gigawatts in the US, and all these data centers are standing up, and these people can see these big, massive buildings sucking up all the power and the water, hopefully not much water. You're going to have that NIMBY issue that people are experiencing in Virginia, all these things sucking them.
Stop using technology and we'll stop building data centers.
Right. But I also think you can turn the story of data centers on their head in terms of what they do for industry and what they do for efficiencies, what they do for humanity, right.
Having the beauty about working amongst the Henry Fords of our time is that they will one day sunset. And when they do, those people that were pioneers become policymakers of governance, and they move on. And that's how someone standardized on what is defined as a pickup truck, what is defined as a van, what is defined as a sedan, or
Ford, as I said to DCSU a long time, is the only pickup truck.
Shit. Oh man, fix or repair daily. Is that what that means? I've never been a big Ford guy, but I will tell you that is the official truck of Texas, isn't it? I mean, like
they're everywhere.
Yeah,
they're fairly big.
Yeah, but although we both drive Jeeps, so
I love my Jeep.
Yeah,
I'm never getting rid of my Jeep.
Why would you? It's like a Mr. Potato Head for adults, right? You can do anything you want with it. My thing is, we'll see this industry after the election cycle become more mainstream. And that's going to allow us to really focus harder on getting more to the Gen Zers, the 18 to 24s. I'm not trying to stop people in college and saying you're wasting your time, but I'm saying if you're not really getting it done there, then you don't need to finish college to get a living and make a fine wage or build a new career in this industry that we don't hire based on experience or talent because we don't fire people for that. We fire them based on character and personality, impact the culture. So we are going to just start hiring people with no experience, maybe, because even that is a benefit. They have less baggage and bad habits. And
they're coachable, right?
Coachable is all that matters. And that's character and personality. We hire and fire based on the impact they make the culture. You just told me the same thing. So like, I see this big transformation. I hope that when we get into the first part, or Q1, I think that what we'll start doing is seeing more attention in AI. And more attention to AI is going to be focused on, there's a whole spectrum of AI. There's people that are only feared about it taking over the world. There are people wondering how it's going to take their jobs. I believe that AI is hope. I believe that it's going to create not only a lot more jobs, but it'll create a better and healthier balance of life. I mean, when you have the CEO of JP Morgan Chase saying that Gen Alpha's generation could potentially live to be 150 years old, and by then technology will allow them to have a 3-day work week.
Just as long as they stop eating McDonald's, you'll be okay.
Well, think about that. We were born in a time in which, well, before our time, everyone was smoking cigarettes. I remember that there was a cigarette campaign for Marlboro, which like 4 out of 5 doctors recommend Marlboro Lights over Camel Lights. You remember that one? I love that commercial. God dang it. There was a t-shirt for that. And then that's gone, poof, because society with technology, I mean, look, I'm 48. I just turned 49 last weekend.
Congrats.
Thanks, brother. But that was the same age as R.G. Bunker and All in the Family. And he looked like he was 70. So technology has allowed us to age.
For sure. Yeah.
We moved the needle to the left in our aging. Cigarettes are no longer as cool as they were. They're not in all the TV shows and movies, and they're not as prevalent. In fact, when you see people doing it, like they're almost shamed into buying those cigarettes. Fast food's the same. We were born and raised where that was an emerging form of technology. The convenience of food was raised because of a feminine movement, and people started making TV dinners and processed foods, and that led to convenient foods. And now look at what that did to humanity and society. So there's going to be changes, right?
Of course.
And I think that to the Gen Zers, their technology will one day be viewed as the cell phone and the cheeseburger. And they're going to be like, I still want one of those every now and then, but I don't need it all the time.
No.
So it's Goldilocks, too hot, too cold before just right.
When you also talk about people worried about losing their jobs and any kind of, we're talking about the 5th industrial revolution, as change happens, people always worry about that. But you can adopt, but also challenge. I think you can adopt, you need to adopt and do things, but you can also challenge things as things come out just to make sure they're done properly, right? So for the betterment of everyone.
Well, I hope that that's what happens. I hope that in the next few years, we start seeing the people that created this industry start governing this industry so that we can standardize within this industry. And that's when we stop going to 487 watts per square foot. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's code lock so that we could stabilize supply chains. Right now, it's a huge race of market share. So everyone's trying to build the best flux capacitor. And at the end of the day, like, there's a diminishing return. We'll hit a plateau in which it's no longer worth it. The juice won't be worth the squeeze for that one. So like what we're building is Ferraris, and we're going to realize that what we really just need is more F-150s. right? And that's when we're going to stop worrying about the product itself. You and I were born in this industry back when people were signing contracts. You were doing site selection based on the electrical topology and who had the best whatever, knowing that there was 5 nines, 7 nines, regardless, you were signing 2N SLAs with 100% uptime. The product no longer became the design of the technology. It became the speed and the volume and the velocity in which they could deliver the product.
You bet.
And I think at some point, as demand of technology continues to be shoved down our throat, you'll see a continuation in which people will care less and less and less about the granularity of designs. I think that people—
It's happening now. It's happening now. What people are willing to accept from a site perspective and build perspective just to get capacity online, right?
Talent will be viewed as a service, just like plumbing does. When you have a problem at home with your, you don't ask for 5 resumes from a plumber. You just like, send me a plumber or send me an electrician. Talent as a service will be like that. We're creating labor incubators to where people are like, I need people, send them. And the days in which there's just the volume of what we're going to do is going to make it to where we have no choice but to be hiring more people with 0 experience and then teaching them through incubators of labor.
So when you're doing the incubator, so when you're, and I know you guys have a staffing role too. So when you bring these people in that might have, are there training programs you've developed for these folks to get them just up to speed, because they're going to step out of whatever world they're in today into something that's moving very, very fast and demands are high.
So that's why it's hard. We have to partner with like IDCA and groups like that because we iterate as an industry so quickly that it's just, that's why I'm not a big fan of college. If you go to college for technology this year, you're a freshman, your parents must be proud. When you graduate 4 years later, everything that you learned in that element of technology is already obsolete.
Sure.
Right. So I think that we're not teaching technology, we're teaching human beings how to adapt to a changing environment. We're just taking a page out of the military's playbook and applying it to the civilian community and saying, hey man, not for nothing, Uncle Sam's done a really good job of taking a human being and put him in an environment, and 8 to 12 weeks later, they come back as a completely different human being. And their emotional range is massively wider. And they are in the mission critical industry, except they're now, with that oath they took to sign to go measure it in mortality instead of downtime. There's changes that are coming, and labor is going to be the biggest factor. Once we find a way to the 18 to 24-year-olds, we find more labor introduced into the space, and those people don't know the limitations of this space. So they're going to find better ideas for us to iterate as an industry. And they're going to probably simultaneously do that while working in collaboration with the baby boomers that are retiring that pioneered this industry, and they're establishing governance. And then once we standardize, then you're going to see colleges having 2-year programs, teaching kids how to do things in the colleges, or you're going to see us as hiring more from the military and more from the trade. There's the most advanced weapons, machinery, and technology in this world are going to be found in the military. They're designed for the military. Why wouldn't people go into the military as an incubator of labor to be exposed to the greatest forms of technology ever designed so they come back into the civilian community and have that advantage? Or you could go into the trades. I don't think college is for everybody.
No, it's definitely not. I think military and trades is a great way. And also, you know, just to add on to that, when you are developing these large sites, because there are how many are coming on, that you have the ability to start impacting. We talk to these two-year trade programs, that you have the ability to impact those trade programs by helping build these programs that will eventually happen, you know, that will eventually get people trained up for the areas that you're looking for.
100%. Well, Scott, we could talk about this forever. And this isn't the last time I hope that you come talk on the podcast, because one, I'll bring crayons next time.
Or a beer. You give me water.
Well, listen, we're getting back into it. We had a few beers for lunch. I had to slow down because I would—
that was supposed to be secret.
Finish a bottle of Blanton's on this podcast with a couple guys once, and then they'd find me in the parking lot doing the funky chicken.
That's a good time.
Yeah. But we're getting back to it. I'm getting ready to bring on one of my OGs, one of my good buddies, and when that happens, we'll be just doing tequila again like the good old days. But I had to go through this whole cycle in my entrepreneurial phase where I'm like, if I can't give myself 100%, you know, I'm not going to give my business 100%. And if I can't lead myself, then I can't lead others. So I had to take a break from all of my fun and just dig in.
That's key, right? Because it takes you away from what you really need to do. And
yeah,
it muddles the mind, right?
I love to party more than everybody. And one day I will again. But I had to be willing to stop everything for a few years to build something, right? And I'm getting closer to being able to enjoy those spirits a little bit more.
How many people are you employing? What are you doing today? How many people are there?
I don't know. I'm hiring about 15 to 20 a month right now. So, I mean, we don't measure the souls like that.
No, just in terms, but your impact in terms of people, that's what you've done. You said 5 years into it, you're 15 to 20 people a month. That's fantastic. That's a huge win because you're impacting people's lives. I know there's a tremendous amount of pressure and stress on people's shoulders to do that, but that's a huge accomplishment. So kudos to you.
No, man, I appreciate it. I think there's nothing more inspiring for me to look at than a group of people that we get to hire that get to reinvent themselves. There's nothing more dangerous than them either because they're incredible. So I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing your voice. I enjoy hanging out with you, and I look forward to doing that again.
Hope so. Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks, buddy.